Good evening and welcome to the Chatham Board of Selectmen and the Chatham Airport Commission joint meeting. Today is December 1st, 2020. This is a remote participation only. I'm going to ask that you please mute your audios. We don't have any ambient background noise, if you would. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify me. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 23, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Chatham Board of Selectmen and the Chatham Airport Commission is being conducted via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to the proceedings as provided for in the like to listen to the meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-4410, excuse me. Let me repeat that, 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 134-208-476#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Okay. As I said, this is a remote participation meeting, and it is important that we're able to conduct the meeting as best to our ability tonight to allow for the presentation to be heard and to have public comments at the appropriate time. So in order for you to comment on agenda items at the appropriate time, if you have a Teams meeting app, please use the raise and lower hand device. It is located on the bar on your screen, and I will be able to see it. For those of you calling in by phone and unable to use the hand lower raise device, when I call for a roll of those on the phone who would like to speak, simply call out your name, and I'll place you in the queue to speak. And you'll be called on in the appropriate time. I'll repeat that later on down the road. So this is a joint meeting, and I want to remind everyone that any questions or comments will have to go through me as the chair. I will provide more details on the agenda item B's public comment and question portions of the item of that item at the appropriate time. But for now, I ask that you mute your audio and disable your video until the proper time of when you will speak, except for the commission and the Board of Selectmen and supporting staff. We will begin the meeting by taking a roll call of the Board of Selectmen and then the Chatham Airport Commission in order to declare we have a quorum. So I'm going to go first, and I'll roll call the board. Selectman Kokolas.
Present.
Selectman Metters.
Present.
Selectman Duncan.
Present.
Selectman DeCastro.
Present.
And the chair obviously is present, so I have a quorum. Chairman Harris, will you take a roll call of the Chatham Airport Commission to declare that you have a quorum, please?
Yes, Madam Chairman. Commissioner Mike Galen.
Present.
Commissioner David Owens.
Present.
Commissioner Peter Donovan.
Present.
Commissioner Ted Burke.
Present.
Commissioner Susan Wilcox. Commissioner Mike Cortese.
Present.
We have 4.
Okay, I think Susan's on.
And myself present, so we have 6 of 7.
Okay, Susan is muted, but I see that she's present.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. So you have a quorum.
Yep,
Right.
I do. Thank you.
Okay.
7.
We both do. Okay, thank you. So we both have a quorum, and I want to note that the goal for this evening's meeting is about a 2-hour meeting. So it's time to proceed. But before we get to the main agenda item that you're all here for, our Director of Natural Resources, Dr. Duncanson, and our Town Manager, Jill Goldsmith, will give a COVID-19 update, which is agenda item A. And after each of them give their update, I'll reach out for questions from the board, the commission, and then the public. So welcome, Dr. Bob.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, everyone. So quickly, because I know you've got a full agenda tonight. Right now, as of this afternoon, worldwide, We are at 63.6 million cases of COVID-19. We are over 1.4 million deaths worldwide. In the United States, we currently have 13,600,000 plus cases, and we are at 269,000 plus deaths in the US. In Massachusetts, as of the 5 o'clock report this afternoon, we are currently at 229,205 cases, and we are at 10,778 deaths. And that includes both confirmed and probable cases in Massachusetts. In Barnstable County, for confirmed cases, we are currently at 3,129, which is an increase of 82 cases over yesterday. Wow. And an increase of 368 cases since your meeting last week. We are currently at 192 deaths in Barnstable County, which is an increase of 0 from yesterday, and an increase of only 2 deaths since last week. So the Cape continues to do a great job of flattening the curve, as well as keeping the infection rate as low as possible. In Chatham, we are currently at 55 confirmed cases. We had 1 newly reported case this afternoon, and we were at 53 cases, confirmed cases last Tuesday. So we've had an increase of 2 since your meeting last week. We are currently, or not currently, we are at only 2 deaths of known Chatham residents since the pandemic began, both of those occurring back in the June time period. So that's great news that we have no additional confirmed cases of Chatham residents. Just a quick update, in Cape Cod Hospital, as of yesterday, there were 11 COVID-19 patients, none in the ICU, and Falmouth Hospital had 4 confirmed COVID patients, again, none in the ICU. So that continues to be good news, although as I'm sure everyone is aware, we are in a second surge. And we are starting to potentially see the impacts of a surge from Thanksgiving holiday period and travel occurring within that overall second surge as well. And those of us in the public health community, I think, expect that to get worse over the next 2 weeks or so as we get to that roughly 2-week period after the Thanksgiving holiday, given that we saw the busiest travel days on Sunday since we've seen since the start of the pandemic. I reran the numbers with our new cases in terms of the age distribution. There was not a significant change from what was reported last week. The 39-year-old and younger demographics, so those between 0 and 39 years old, account for approximately 37.6% of the Chatham cases since the start. And that really is unchanged from last week. The next age group, basically those 69 years to 30 years old, to 40 years old, account for roughly 33.9% of the distribution. And those older than 70 years old and older account for 28.3%. So roughly the same age distribution that we saw in last week's report as well. You know, we get a couple of young folks, and then we get a couple of folks in the older demographic pretty much, you know, on a weekly basis. So that's why that hasn't been any real significant change in that. Just a couple of things from the governor today, who held a statewide news conference at noon. Hospitalizations statewide are averaging about 2.5% increase every day. So every day there's about a 2.5% increase in hospitalizations throughout the Commonwealth. And, you know, we expect that, or we don't expect it, but that's what we're seeing due to the second surge that we are now in. And then something that I thought was a couple of things that were important from the governor's conference. As of right now, the governor is not anticipating any additional restrictions. As everyone knows, I think we have the stay-at-home advisory from 10 p.m. till 5. We have the travel advisory. There is only currently one state on the low-risk category for travel, and that is Hawaii. Vermont made the list of high-risk states as of last Friday. So basically, if you're traveling anywhere in the mainland US and Alaska, you need to abide by the travel order when you return to Massachusetts. And I think it's also important for folks to keep in mind that most other states have travel quarantines and restrictions as well. So it's not just that you're going to face something when you return to Massachusetts, but simply traveling to another state, you may encounter quarantine requirements and other impacts on a visit. So as we get in, further into the holidays here, it's important for people to plan out-of-state travel, or really just to, follow the advice of the CDC, the State Department of Public Health, the governor, and others, that you frankly don't travel. That's really the best thing right now. The governor also sent out word of caution regarding houses of worship as we enter the holiday season again, where a lot of people want to spend time at their church or synagogue or wherever. There are no restrictions per se on those kind of visits, but again, just to reiterate, to use common sense, abide by the mask requirements, abide by the social distancing requirements, and enjoy those facilities responsibly as we get into that holiday period where, a lot of people go to Christmas Eve services, and we've got Hanukkah and all coming up. To just do it responsibly and pay attention to those requirements. And then the final thing I just wanted to quickly touch on is testing sites. As we've all known for quite a while, the Cape has been what's called a testing desert. We have been unsuccessful in getting the state to bring any of their stop the spread testing sites to Cape Cod, the nearest one being New Bedford and Fall River. But there will be an announcement probably either later this week or early next week about testing sites on Cape Cod. Most of the current testing sites at CVS and whatnot are booked up, or you need a doctor's recommendation to go get tested. But hopefully either later this week or early next week, announcements will be made regarding some testing sites on the Cape that will take both symptomatic and asymptomatic individuals. And that's the critical part because it's been very difficult for asymptomatic individuals to get tested on Cape Cod. But some state funding has come through, as well as some funding from other sources that's being pooled together. And there will be announcements of testing sites in the Lower Cape, the Mid Cape, and hopefully we're working on opening some testing sites in the Outer Cape as well. So hopefully that will be coming through next week, and that will make a big difference in testing for Cape individuals. For the most part, it will be free. We're looking into insurance billing to make it a longer term program. However, you will also be able to get tested for travel purposes, but there will be a cost associated with that. It should be significantly lower than current cost to get tested for travel at the few sites on the Cape that provide that. But there will be more news on that coming out shortly. And so I think that's all I have for tonight. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, we're getting some feedback here. I don't know what it is. Okay, I think you can hear me now. All right. I was on the reopening task force this morning, and one of the notes from the county was that the Barnstable, Dukes, and Nantucket counties positive test rates the last 14 days exceeds the state's average, which is very telling for the Cape. I guess Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard are getting hit pretty hard, as is the Mid-Cape Barnstable area. So there is the community spread issue that's going on in those areas. So the testing is going to be very helpful. Peter, I'm going to reach out to my board. Have any questions? I see Peter's hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, Dr. Bob, I saw a flash pop up on my screen, and I didn't go back and look at it more. It talked about that. It mentioned that the hospital is going to limit the number of visitors. Have you seen anything about that?
I haven't seen anything specific, but I have heard that, yes, that may be coming. As Serene indicated, there is widespread community transmission right now. And so they are trying to take all the precautions necessary obviously to keep the hospital in as good a shape as possible. So yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from my board? Okay, any questions from the commissioners? Okay, I don't see any. Any questions from the general public? Please use the raise lower hand app or call out your name. Okay, I'm hearing none. Okay, thank you, Dr. Duncanson. So we'll
Okay.
move on to Jill. Would you like?
Thank you. So very quickly, I wanted to report that while town offices are open, we are temporarily pausing our public access by appointment. So people can still call, email, Dropbox, and we do have various vestibules where we can leave information for people. And if there is an emergency or some access that's needed to town employees, just call us and we'll make arrangements to help accommodate you. And then good news, the PARK program, which is our before school and after school program, had opened on Monday with no incidents. There were no participants who had tested positive. As you might recall, we had one community center employee test positive who has been out quarantining, and we do wish them well in their recovery so that the PARK program is open, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Any questions for Jill from the board? Any questions for Jill from the commissioners? Any questions for Jill from the general public? All right, well, that was quick. Thank you, Jill. We'll move on. Okay. All right, now we're going to get on to our the meat of our meeting. So just get to my meeting notes. So we're going to move on to the main purpose of why we're meeting tonight, and it's in response to numerous questions raised at public meetings on the airport and its multi-level of entities that are associated with the authority to manage, operate, maintain, finance, and plan for the airport. So that's why we're holding this meeting tonight. We're excited to bring you this overview that will be presented by Staff Liaison to the Airport Commission, Terry Whelan, and our town attorney, Pat Costello. They'll give the overview of the airport governance, and the overview will illustrate the multiple levels of those entities associated with what I had mentioned before when it comes to the airport. This meeting is for you, the general public, and for all of us to get a better understanding of the complexity of how we all work together for the airport. This meeting is also intended to address the authority and venue of some of the public agenda requests that we've received about the airport master plan update and the Board of Selectmen and the Airport Commission's authority and venue. So we're going to move on to the presentation side of it. And after the overview, Pat will be available to respond to questions related to the powers, the roles, and the authority. How we're going to set this up is first, the questions will come from the Board of Selectmen. You'll be asked to make, I just want to let the board know that you're going to be asked to make comments at the end of the meeting. So these will be for just general for questions. And that's the same for the commission. And then we'll turn to the general public. I'm allowing 3 minutes per person for comments or questions. Again, I want to remind folks of the public comment protocol to use your team app's hand raise or lower to get my attention that you want to speak. And at the appropriate time, I'll call on people that we have gathered the names for. But before we get started, I wanted to say thank you to Town Council Pat Costello and Terry Whelan and our Town Manager Jill Goldsmith and our Airport Commission Selectman Liaison Peter Kokolis for preparing tonight's meeting. I'm hoping the portion of this meeting goes smoothly. I'm very excited for you to hear the overview and to hear your comments. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over first to the Airport Commission Staff Liaison, Terry Whelan, and then he will turn it over to the Town Council at the appropriate time. So let's move forward. Yes.
Dean has his hand up. I was scrolling through the thing.
Okay, Dean, you have your hand up. Do you have a question before we proceed?
Yes, Madam Chair. Just a clarification. The agenda item is the governance overview. So you did to the master plan update, but is it fair to say that the master plan update itself is not the subject of tonight's
No,
agenda?
it's not, but it's included into the memo, and I just wanted to mention that it was in the description of what we're doing. But this is definitely, you're right, Dean, this is definitely about the governance. This is not about we're not commenting on the plan itself. That is, will obviously be clearly up to the airport commission to deal with down the road. So thank you for that clarity. Anything else, Dean?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, so Terry, you want to take it away? Think Terry? Okay.
Yes, and just confirming everybody can see the presentation before I start.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shireen. And again, good evening. This is Terry Whalen, the Airport Commission Staff Liaison. And then for tonight's overview on governance of the Chatham Municipal Airport, I'll be providing some context on the history and establishment of the airport, as well as a general funding overview. Then I'll turn it over to the presentation to Town Council Pat Costello to highlight the regulatory framework for airport governance in Chatham.
I don't care.
So just for a quick overview and history establishing the airport. In the late 1920s, 8 parcels were assembled by Wilford Berube for establishment of an airfield. And again, at that time, it was a privately owned airport and it was operated into the 30s. In 1940, the Massachusetts Aeronautics Commission approved the commercial use of what was soon to become the Chatham Municipal Airport. So in 1949, town meeting allocated $43,750 to match state and federal contributions to acquire the properties needed to make runway improvements and establish the Chatham Airport Commission. So recognition of the Chatham Municipal Airport is important because it establishes it as part of the Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA, as part of the National Plan for Integrated Airport Systems, which makes it eligible for funding through the FAA's Airport Improvement Program, or AIP funding. And this is a very quick thumbnail, but the key components or legs, if you will, for the funding overview. The airport manager, fixed-based operator, pays to use the facility via an Airport Management Services Agreement, or the AMSA, and provides daily on-site management by a state-certified airport manager. Other funding comes in for the Airport Revolving Fund through, again, as I just noted, the AMSA, the management agreement, rental space for fishermen's storage area, and hangars located on the airport all go into the Airport Revolving Fund. And this Airport Revolving Fund is used for operational expenses and local match requirements. The Airport Revolving Fund was established by annual town meeting in 1996. Funding for airport infrastructure, navigation aids, and planning projects are typically eligible for airport improvement funding, with 90% federal and 5% state funding match with a 5% town contribution. So again, that's that mix of funding where the town contributes 5% and the state provides another 5% for a total project, with the Federal Aviation Administration providing the remaining 90%. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pat to get to the crux of the regulatory framework overview.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening, everyone. As Terry noted, the governance structure of with respect to the Chatham Airport commenced in Chatham in 1949. In 1946, the Massachusetts General Court adopted a series of amendments to General Laws Chapter 90, which generally governs transportation matters, which addressed what was then the increase in aviation or aeronautic activity. Those provisions of Chapter 90 allowed local communities, cities and towns, to establish municipal airports and it established a governance structure that towns could adopt and implement with regard to their local airports. Chatham, in fact, did adopt that governance structure in 1949 at the annual town meeting on February 23rd. And since that point in time, those provisions of Chapter 90 have essentially governed the operations of the Chatham Municipal Airport. The issue of governance comes up most frequently today in several of the correspondences I've seen in advance of this particular meeting with respect to applications for AIP grants submitted by the town to the FAA. Given the fact that the provisions of Chapter 90 and the general governance provisions of the Town of Chatham charter and bylaws would dictate which boards, commissions, or officers of the town have the authority to submit the grant applications. This particular moment for discussion of governance is critical, given the activities that the Airport Commission is currently engaged in. AIP grants are issued to recipients who are known as sponsors. Quite simply, a sponsor is the owner or operator of an airport. In our particular situation, based on the statutory enabling provisions that the town of Chatham has implemented, in my opinion, the sponsor is quite simply the town of Chatham, acting by and through its Airport Commission. The Airport Commission, by virtue of the various provisions of Chapter 90, is vested with broad authority to maintain, develop, and operate the Chatham Municipal Airport. It is the body that would have the ultimate authority to act as an airport sponsor under federal regulations and under the FAA guidelines. The definition of sponsor for purposes of the FAA grant applications is set forth in 49 U.S. Code section 47102, and it reads quite simply as follows. Sponsor means, in the case of a public airport, a public agency that submits to the Secretary under this subchapter an application for financial assistance. FAA guidelines themselves further provide that, as used herein, the term public agency sponsor means a public agency with control of a public use airport. Airport sponsor is otherwise generally defined in legal publications as the entity that has the legal authority to apply for a grant and to finance and carry out a proposed project. It means an entity that is legally, financially, and otherwise able to assume and carry out the certifications, representations, warranties, assurances, covenants, and other obligations required for the airport. Or it means the owner, manager, or other person or entity designated to represent the interests of the airport. In my opinion, as noted, the Chatham Airport Commission, by virtue of the provisions of Chapter 90, has that requisite legal authority and is enabled by those provisions to carry out those specific functions. So accordingly, for purposes of AIP grants, I would suggest that it's very clear that the Chatham Airport Commission is the entity that plays a primary role on behalf of the town as an airport sponsor. Now, we certainly want to take into account, we must take into account the provisions of the Chatham Home Rule Charter and the bylaws of the town and read them conjunctively with the provisions of general law to determine how, in effect, those responsibilities are carried out. The provisions of the charter, which was adopted by vote of the voters in the town in 1995, in my view, do nothing to substantively or legally alter or shift any responsibilities with respect to the airport sponsor activities with respect to the federal government. The charter does vest in our Board of Selectmen, as most charters with Board of Selectmen form of governments do, broad authority as the chief executive officer of the town and the primary policy-making body of the town. The Board of Selectmen does not, in my view, by virtue of that general authority, supersede or usurp from the Airport Commission any authority it has vested in it pursuant to the provisions of general law. I see nothing inconsistent with the Board of Selectmen maintaining its role as the chief policy-making body of the town and the chief executive officer of the town, and the Airport Commission following through with its responsibilities under the provisions of the general laws that govern airports. If we can move on, Terry, to the next slide. Thank you. Chapter 90, as I noted, does provide very pervasive levels of authority to airport commissions to manage, operate, and maintain an airport on behalf of the town. As you can see by this list, Section 51D of Chapter 90 essentially established the governance structure of the Airport Commission for cities and towns in the Commonwealth. The provisions of Section 51E of Chapter 90 provides for the appointment of an Airport Commission, which authority lies with the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen is enabled by the statute to appoint an odd number of members from 3 to 11 to serve in an Airport Commission. And the Airport Commission, by virtue of that statute, has express authority to maintain custody, care, and management of the municipal airport. In fact, that's exactly what has taken place in Chatham from the very outset. As previously noted, in the February 23rd, 1949 annual town meeting, the town voted to appropriate funds for the establishment of an airport. It accepted the provisions of Chapter 90, Sections 51D and following, and it authorized at that point in time the Board of Selectmen to acquire such interests in real property to enable the town to establish an airport. Between February of 1949 and October of 1949, the Board of Selectmen did appoint an Airport Commission, which in October 1949 executed an order of taking by which the town of Chatham acquired the property that currently consists of the majority of the airport. That action was taken by the Airport Commissioners pursuant to its authority under Section 51G of Chapter 90, not the Board of Selectmen. So from the very beginning, in 1949, the Airport Commission, in an unfettered manner, exercised the authorities granted to such commissions under Chapter 90 for the purpose of establishing and operating the airport. Next slide, Terry, please. The other most significant power or duty that an Airport Commission has is the authority to expend funds and enter into contracts on behalf of the town for the airport operation. Section 51I provides a very broad authorization to the Airport Commission to enter into contracts and to determine the terms and conditions of contracts for the operation, maintenance, and development of the airport. It is specifically noted in Section 51I that where the Airport Commission obtains federal funding to assist or to fund operations or improvements at the airport, the Airport Commission shall act in the manner prescribed by the federal authorities acting under the laws of the United States and any rules or regulations made thereunder, notwithstanding any other law of the Commonwealth to the contrary. So, with respect to AIP grants and other such funds that are provided to the Airport Commission by the FAA today, the town accepts those funds and is obligated by the provisions of Section 51I to expend those funds in accordance with the terms and conditions that are mandated by federal law. Most significant in that regard are the grant assurances that apply to the AIP funding that the town has received. Pursuant to Section 51I and pursuant to applicable federal law, when a town accepts federal funds for improvements to the airport, it is obligated to utilize and expend those funds in accordance with the terms of the federal laws, regulations, and orders of the FAA that apply thereto. With regard to the contract and financial obligations pertinent to operating an airport, the Airport Commission certainly has the legal authority to implement or exercise those rights. Nonetheless, we again look to the town charter and town bylaws to determine what local proceedings or requirements would apply to that as well. In the case of the Chatham Airport Commission, it doesn't have any independent support staff. It utilizes the office of the town manager, who is the chief administrative officer of the town, the chief procurement officer of the town, and other staff such as Terry, who devotes substantial time to the airport operations, to assist it in carrying out its duties and responsibilities. I view that as entirely appropriate as well. It's consistent with the mandate and the charge of the town bylaws and the town charter to have the town manager engaging in procurement activities, engaging in financial matters such that the Airport Commission's operations can be integrated into the general fiscal schemes that the town adopts, whether it's funding at annual town meeting or otherwise receipt and accounting for appropriations that the airport receives. So that's a basis by which the town manager would be involved or engaged in airport contracting or financial activities. Okay. Next slide, Terry. All right, as noted earlier, the Board of Selectmen, pursuant to our charter and bylaws, is the chief executive officer of the town and the chief policy-making officer of the town. That's clear and undisputed. The Board of Selectmen also, by virtue of the provisions of Chapter 90, Section 51E, appoints the airport commissioners. So to the extent that they are an appointing authority for the commission, they do retain some level of purview over the conduct or activities of the airport commissioners. The Board of Selectmen also controls certain financial aspects of town governance, such as the issuance of warrants for town meeting and for appropriating funds at town meetings. To the extent that the Airport Commission would need appropriations of funding at the local level for its operations, which it most certainly does on a regular basis, there would obviously be a role that the Board of Selectmen would play in that regard. Furthermore, the Board of Selectmen has a general supervisory role pursuant to the town charter and bylaws, whereby it has the authority to investigate the affairs of the town or any agency of the town, or to authorize the town manager to investigate any such matters. The Board of Selectmen also has the authority to cause the laws and orders for the governance of the town to be enforced. So in that vein, the board does retain some general purview over the Airport Commission, much in the same way that the Board of Selectmen would maintain a level of purview over the myriad other boards, agencies, and committees that are appointed in the town. As we know, pursuant to our general bylaws, section 10.2, standing committees are appointed by the Board of Selectmen in accordance with the charter and any regulations. Among those committees are the Airport Commission, the Board of Assessors, the Board of Health, Cemetery Commission, Conservation Commission, Historical Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission, Planning Board, and myriad others. Each one of those boards or committees, commissions that I noted, are statutorily enabled and authorized to fulfill their functions. They act pursuant to those statutes in an independent and autonomous manner. The Board of Selectmen does not interject itself into the matters of those various boards and commissions, and I would suggest that the very same level of involvement would be appropriate with respect to the Airport Commission, given the pervasive and wide-standing level of authority that the Airport Commission has under Chapter 90 to conduct its operations. So the charter does not, in my view, authorize the Board of Selectmen in its capacity as chief executive officer or chief policy-making officer of the town to supersede or override the statutory powers and duties that are vested in the Airport Commission. Similarly, to the extent that we're looking at who is the airport sponsor acting with respect to the Chatham Municipal Airport, I believe that, as noted earlier, that would be the Airport Commission, acting on behalf of the town of Chatham, which is the sponsor of the airport. So therein lies what I believe to be the appropriate role of governance for the Board of Selectmen with respect to airport matters. Next slide. Thanks, Terry. As noted earlier, the town manager has very specific duties and obligations under the charter and bylaws as well. She is responsible for the daily administration and operation of the affairs of the town, including but not limited to governmental functions of administration, finance, and operation maintenance of building facilities. That applies to the airport as well. That would apply to finance or administrative matters relating to the Airport Commission's fulfillment of its duties. She is also, much like the Board of Selectmen, authorized to administer and enforce provisions of the laws of the Commonwealth or any other special laws applicable to the town, whether they be codes, regulations, public records requests, open meeting law issues, etc. To the extent that the Airport Commission is clearly a department or agency of the town of Chatham, her purview on those matters would apply with the Airport Commission as well. And as we noted a few minutes ago, there is some financial oversight involved with regard to airport matters from the town manager's office as well. It is that office's obligation to ensure that financial and administrative activities of the commission with respect to the airport are maintained in her capacity as chief procurement officer with regard to engagement of contractors or vendors for services, supplies, or goods, or with regard to financial matters generally, coordination of budgets, working airport commission needs for funding or appropriation through the town meeting process, much as she does for the other departments within the town. Next slide, Terry, please. There have been some questions raised as to what role the town manager would play within the realm of being an airport sponsor. As discussed, she is the administrative officer for the town. To the extent that the town of Chatham, as a municipal entity, is the airport sponsor, the town manager would have the legal authority capacity as procurement officer or as chief administrative officer of the town to execute applications, grants, and other FAA correspondence involving compliance or other such actions, concession agreements, and the like. In fact, the FAA routinely will communicate directly with the town in its capacity as sponsor through the office of the town manager. That's not unusual. That's not an ultra vires action in any way, shape, or form. In my view, it's merely the town manager fulfilling her role as the chief administrative officer of the town in assisting the airport commission as a town agency. Next slide, please, Terry. Just generally speaking, it's not really a matter of local governance, but the law is quite clear that the FAA has a very pervasive role with respect to the regulation and control of navigable airspace. It's an exclusive jurisdiction in many respects. So the primary focus of the Airport Commission and legal obligation, in fact, of the Airport Commission is to make sure that operations at the airport comply with mandates issued by the FAA or the Mass DOT relative to aviation or aeronautic activities emanating from or going to the Chatham Municipal Airport, to make sure that all standards relative to safety and efficient use and operations of navigable airspace are implemented appropriately in the town. That is an obligation of the Airport Commission in the first instance. As I noted earlier, if there is any level of lack or failure to perform that obligation in an appropriate manner, I don't think it would be out of line at all for the Board of Selectmen and or the town manager to investigate the matter or to take such actions as they deem to be necessary or appropriate to assure that appropriate federal laws are properly enforced. I'm not aware of any such situation existing in Chatham now that would require that level of purview or oversight by those boards. I believe that the Chatham Airport Commission and its consultants has been working diligently with the FAA and Mass DOT on several fronts. I'm not aware of any enforcement proceedings brought by either of those agencies as against the town with regard to any airport or aviation activities. So that's a key component of what the Airport Commission is responsible for as well. Airport operations have to be conducted strictly in accordance with federal and state laws that apply, as well as local laws, but the primary crux of regulatory authority with regard to airport operations is within the FAA and the Mass DOT. Okay, next slide, Terry. Again, the FAA does have regulations relative to safe and efficient use of airspace. It has adopted standards to identify obstructions to air navigation, imaginary surfaces, navigational aids facilities. That would include natural growth, terrain, permanent or temporary construction, any such hazards that could impair or impede safe navigation. Next slide, please. Grant assurances, which we referenced earlier, are conditions that are attached to federal grant approvals whereby federal funds are allocated for Chatham's use with regard to airport improvement, development, or operations. The grant assurances require specifically in Grant Assurance 19 that the airport must commit that it will ensure that airspace is cleared of potential hazards. Chatham has adopted in the late 1950s, I believe, a bylaw, which is required by federal law, to prohibit obstructions to navigable airspace pertinent to the Chatham Municipal Airport. Chapter 100, Airport Approach Protection of the town's general bylaws, does provide regulatory a regulatory scheme whereby the Airport Commission can take whatever action it deems appropriate to regulate and restrict the height of structures and objects of natural growth in the vicinity of the airport. The bylaw does allow the commission to take whatever actions it deems appropriate. The commission is authorized to the extent necessary to acquire easements to assure that growth is maintained in such restricted areas adjacent to the airport. And the benefits are the health, safety, and general welfare protections provided by the bylaw, are generally sound for all residents of the town. It protects not only users of the airport, it serves to protect those living in and around the airport and the general population of the community as well, to make sure that operations in and out of the airport are conducted in a safe and convenient manner. I'll wrap it up here for now, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on governance issues that may arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Terry, for the overview. For right now, I'm going to ask if the Board of Selectmen have any questions. I see that Peter's hand is raised. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Tom. I know that we've been trying to, I think it's important that we have a baseline for what the legal positions are and the responsibilities and roles for the Airport Commission, Town Manager, and the Board of Selectmen. And you presented a case which I think may have a number of people may have some issues with. I think you tried to answer a lot of the questions. We had a number of emails in the last day or so that look at go through our charts, and I'll let them ask their questions, and look at our charter with a number of questions. And we're at a level where we want to understand, at least for me, to understand where we are, so that we have how we affect what is happening with the Airport Commission. And I want to do it legally. But I just have a couple of questions that were popped up from some of the people that have sent some emails in that a couple of them I don't see their name on the list. But you've already answered this, but I think it's important for me to ask the question again. There's an assertion or an opinion that as the sponsors of the airport, and that's the town of Chatham, that is represented by the Board of Selectmen and not the Airport Commission. The Board of Selectmen oversight and policy responsibility then for the airport. That's one question, and I have two quick ones after that.
Thank you, Peter. The Board of Selectmen is the chief policy making officer of the town, or entity of the town, if you will. Is pervasive in virtually every charter where you have a Board of Selectmen form of government. The establishment of policy town-wide is not in conflict, in my view, with the specific duties and responsibilities that are vested in fact, delegated to other bodies in the town by the general laws. I don't believe that the Airport Commission would have to, again, succumb or yield to the Board of Selectmen with regard to matters relating to operation of the airport, because it has specific authority under General Laws Chapter 90, the numerous provisions we discussed earlier, to implement the operations at the airport. There's nothing that prohibits the Board of Selectmen from inquiring, from investigating, from giving its thoughts or opinions to the Airport Commission with respect to such matters. However, I would suggest that there is a time and a place when such intercession would be appropriate. As I noted earlier, the Board of Selectmen appoints numerous other town boards and commissions, each of which have their own statutory charges. And how frequently or how often does the board interject itself into the business of the Concom, the Board of Health, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Planning Board? It's a very similar situation in my view. That said, to the extent that operations at the airport or determinations and decisions made by the Airport Commission do raise concerns or do have import community-wide that the Board of Selectmen, as elected representatives of the citizens of the town, feel is important enough to warrant its intervention, there's nothing that would preclude the board from meeting or discussing these matters with the commission. And I think you've done that in the past.
Thank you. And real quickly, there were a couple of areas that were highlighted in the charter, and I mentioned them because it really gets to your last point that these are, you know, these are appropriate also for every one of the committees, and most of us on the Board of Selectmen have been on a regulatory commission. One is has the Board of Selectmen abrogated its responsibility to representing the town by not, it's really good answering, you answered it already, but it's put a different way and it always gets added. We're abrogating our responsibility. You're saying we're delegating, that's one. And then appointed officials they may appear to have a conflict of interest. For instance, you put somebody on a planning board who's a planner, or you put an airport commission person on who's a pilot. Is there a potential for conflict of interest? Is that wrong to do? Is that something that we shouldn't be doing? That's the implication that's given. And I'll end with that. Thanks, Pat.
Okay. As noted earlier, one of the general authorities that the Board of Selectmen has is to assure that the laws of the Commonwealth are enforced. That would include the conflict of interest laws, that would include the open meeting laws, so forth and so on. If you have, as a board, have reason to believe that individuals you have appointed to commissions are engaging in some level of conflict of interest or other improper action, it is certainly something that would warrant an inquiry or an investigation on your part. You're not abrogating anything. You're merely fulfilling your role as the general policy making and chief executive authority of the town. Nonetheless, I would suggest that even though there's no bright line on where your authority ends, when it comes to operational planning, design of improvements, application for grants, things of that nature, I would suggest that those are operational issues that lie squarely within the authority of the Commission under Chapter 90.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Pat. Corey, you had your hand up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Pat. How you doing tonight? Just trying to think where I want to start with this. I mean, I know for me personally, my goal is to figure out a way to get the Board of Selectmen, Town Manager, Airport Commission, and the public to work collaboratively to move through all of the concerns that we have. So, with the Board of Selectmen being the chief policy-making agency, and in your previous descriptions about what our role is and what our authority is, I mean, see, for me, I think the board, you know, and if we don't have that authority or we're not acting on that authority, you know, should there be consideration of making some changes to go that route? You know, and that's a conversation we're going to probably have later tonight as we get more input. But where I'm trying to wrap my head around is, so as a chief policy making entity for the town, Board of Selectmen, and we as a board decided that Chatham Airport should have, and I'm just going to throw a couple of random, you know, ideas out there, more focus on medical, helicopters, medevac, you know, that type of scenarios. That was our philosophy. Or if we wanted some kind of economical twist to the airport. We want to add hot air balloons or, some kind of aeronautical element. Wouldn't we have that prerogative to then move that forward to the airport commission, who would then, under their authority and statute, review what is appropriate, what could be, what would need to be done with funding and designs and everything else. And then if anything ever moved forward, then our town manager would clearly execute any contracts or leases or grant, acceptances in that sense. So kind of help me out with the, where we do have a responsibility.
I'm afraid Corey is frozen. So Pat, is there?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
No, I think I certainly understand his question. Yes, the answer quite simply is yes. The board would have the ability to bring those matters to the attention of the Airport Commission and discuss them with the Airport Commission as a policy initiative. Is it required to do so? No, because I think the Airport Commission does have the underlying authority to operate the airport as it deems appropriate, but the Board of Selectmen does have a unique status and a unique role as a policy-making body, whereby it could bring any such policy initiatives to the Airport Commission, just as it could to any other board, committee, or commission of the town that it felt warranted address.
Corey, did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
No, I have some technical issue. I'm good.
Okay. If you do have a problem, just text me and then call in if it continues. I think, Dean, you had your hand up next. Dean?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Terry and Pat, for the presentation. I have a comment and then a question, I think, for Pat. 5 years ago, when I joined the Board of Selectmen, the context of the skydiving controversy, I asked Pat, or Pat clarified in response to a comment I made at the Selectmen's meeting, what the respective authority of the Board of Selectmen versus the Airport Commission was in the context of our authority with respect to other boards, particularly regulatory boards. And I think what you've laid out tonight more expansively, obviously, is generally consistent with what you told me back then, which was basically that the Board of Selectmen does not run the airport. And I don't think it should run the airport. If we were creating this from a tabula rasa, I would say the Board of Selectmen should not run the airport. The Airport Commission should run it. And I think it's prudent that the Board of Selectmen not insinuate itself into the management of the airport. In fact, under the statutory scheme, it's excluded from that prerogative. We can, as you point out, offer guidance and recommendations and suggestions to the Airport Commission, and we have. We did so within the past year, and if the Commission chooses not to follow our suggestions and guidance, our remedy is based on certain other authorities we have under the Charter or under state law, and those include the power of appointment, or not reappointing people, or removing people, or when the Airport Commission has a project they want funded, it's within our authority, if we disagree with it, not to put it on the warrant for town meeting, or to put it on the warrant with a negative recommendation. I think that, Pat, you used the word intercession as something the board could do, and I think that's correct. And I would draw a distinction between intercession and insinuation, which is something we should not do. With respect to the commission itself that we've appointed, I look at the current commission, and I've been very sensitive to people that we put on the commission. It's very difficult. And I found that in my first month as a selectman, to find people who were willing to go on that commission who don't have a predetermined agenda in either direction. I think we have put some people on the commission who don't have that agenda. And I think we have a very good mix of public members versus individuals who have aeronautical background. And with respect to conflict of interest, every member of every board and every committee and every commission in this town is subject to the conflict of interest law. And in the first instance, their responsibility is to follow that statute whenever there's a conflict that presents itself on an issue before them. So those are my general comments. I do have a question for Pat, because you brought up Chapter 100 of the town bylaws, which provides a regulatory mechanism to prohibit obstructions to air navigation. I read that as an exercise of the police power, as opposed to in and of itself authorizing the taking by eminent domain, which is something the Airport Commission has under the general laws, as you point out.
Right.
So it seems to me that's something that I suspect, I've been told, it has never been implemented in the, 60 years it's been in effect, but it is there as a tool for the town for safety in terms of the operations of the airport. So those are my comments. I'm obviously interested in hearing what the public has to say. We've gotten a lot of emails, but I think you've helped clarify some of these fundamental issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Jeff, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Pat. That was very helpful, certainly clarifying and revisiting our relationships and our roles in terms of our governance. You have a great chart in the package that was given out to us, which I appreciated, or either Terry put it together or you put it together. And we're there as the board, and then the town manager and the Airport Commission. We have appointment authority over the Airport Commission, and certainly appoint the town manager, and as she executes our program, our policies, if you will. Then we have the airport itself that's under contract, but I don't see, and we have the Federal Aviation Authority as the federal authority, and the state as the state authority. But in that chart, what I seek and what I think we need as a town is a mechanism for communication and potential compromise. And so that's what I seek. We have advised the Airport Commission to form an advisory committee, and they've chosen not to do that. And I hope that they might take that under advisement again, and perhaps they have, and I'm just not informed. But I look to communicate better between the Airport Commission and our town. I think there's an awful lot of hyperbole, innuendo, misinformation, et cetera, that's out there that most town folks, don't understand. So I think that the Airport Commission needs to do a better job of communicating, and we need a voice for the folks, and we also need a proclivity on both sides to compromise. And I really am looking forward to hearing from our public. We've had a slew of emails that I'm just kind of catching up with of late. I'm certainly familiar with the overarching issues that have presented themselves historically here, but very interested to hear from our public, and I thank you much for your time and your intelligence. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Before we go to the public, though, I do want to ask if the Airport Commission has any questions for Attorney Costello. Any questions from the Airport Commission? You can raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any right now. Susan, you have your hand up. Susan Wilcox, go ahead.
I just have a couple of comments with all this stuff, and again, this is I've just joined the commission, so this can be a little bit overwhelming. And I appreciate the input that Terry put into it, and again, that Mr. Costello has done with trying to solve some of the issues we have. But on the slide number 6, where it's the MGL Chapter 90, under 51G. Now that, Pat, tell me if I'm wrong, but the first sentence of that says, and this is in conjunction to acquisition of property to establish eminent domain purchase and lease of land. But it says for the purpose of establishing an airport, it has this contingency of eminent domain and taking property, et cetera, et cetera. Where in chapter 90 does that pertain to? The airport's been in existence since what, 1958? And again, this particular section 50G is pertaining to the establishment, and we've already been established. So how does that vary?
There we are. Yeah, with the language, so you're correct. It says for the purpose of establishing an airport, the airport commission of a city or town, whenever appropriations have been made therefore, may
Right.
take property by eminent domain under Chapter 79, or may acquire property by purchase, lease, or otherwise, both within and without its territorial limits for airport purposes, and may so take or acquire such easements and airport hazards outside the boundaries of the airport. Legislative language, I view that to be pretty broadly empowering. I believe while it does say such takings can take place for the establishment of an airport, it also says later on in the sentence that such interests in real property can be acquired for airport purposes as well. So I think.
Where are you? What are you reading? Could you read that to me again, please?
Yeah, sure. It was the same sentence you were just reading from, a little further down. And may so take or acquire such easements, I'm sorry, by purchase, lease, or otherwise, both within and without its territorial limits for airport purposes.
Yes. Okay.
So I think that could be broadly construed, Susan, to include expansions or additional needs of the airport for additional space.
Okay, that can be, but if you were sticking to the actual verbiage, this is in conjunction to establishing only. That's one point. And you can say that it can extend to what, it's almost 70 years or 50 or 60 years since this was established, but I want to point that out.
Sure.
And then as far as the AIP grants, and again, there's been a lot of contention about who does what, who's responsible for what. When it says sponsors must be legally and financially and otherwise responsible, that means, are you telling me that I, as an airport commissioner, am legally responsible both financially and otherwise? If somebody from the community gets hurt, am I going to get sued? I don't want that responsibility.
No, you won't.
But it says that I must be legally and financially and otherwise able to carry stuff out.
The airport sponsor has to have those qualifications. The airport sponsor is the town of Chatham. You would only be personally responsible for any actions you take in your official capacity as an airport member, as a municipal employee.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that.
Because that scared me. Chapter 90. Where's chapter 90? Then we go to 51J. And again, this has to do with a lot of the issues that have been coming up as far as the airport commission and the airport versus community activity and concerns. Mm-hmm. Prior to being on the commission, and even now on the commission, am very much concerned about the safety of the airport, the continued absolute use of the airport, and keeping its viability to maximum. But in section 51J, it says airport commission shall adopt rules, regulations for use of municipal airports or for the safety of the public. And that's where we're running into problems, because the airport commission is not always listening to public input as far as what can or can't new or what can change at the airport versus what happened when it first started. Okay. So the safety thing is a big thing for me. And you can jump to the airport protection zone area. Now that thing was this chart, or for the airport protection approach chart, was done in 1958. And for the life of me, I went and I zoomed into this map. And again, this has to do with the safety of the airport. But as I'm looking at that map and I magnified that sucker up 700%, my street isn't even on there. My house isn't on there. My street isn't on there. This airport approach map was done in 1958, and that's almost 65 years ago. A lot of stuff has changed since then. And again, it pertains to the safety of the airport, not only the pilots, the planes, but the surrounding area. Because I live off of George Ryder South, and I want to make sure that when pilots take off and land, they do so in a safe way and also under safe conditions. And it scares me that the Airport Commission may be trying to change the approach. What is the term? Of the approach, the terms of approach on the altitude from the 600 feet that it currently is now, saying that pilots need to be able to see the landing or see the airport runway in order to land. And they're
Suzanne,
okay.
do you have a question on the governance of?
Okay, stop. Okay, done. I'm done.
Are you sure? Okay.
There's some concerns I have.
Okay,
I went past it. I'm sorry. That's it.
That's okay. Thank you. We can double back at the end. Huntley, you had some questions?
Well, not really a question. Thank you, Madam Chairman. And thank you, Pat, for your comments tonight and your explanations to help clarify what the Airport Commission has the authority to do and not to do. And to kind of reiterate what Selectman Metters said earlier, one of the charges that I am taking on as the new chairman of the Airport Commission is definitely to create a more amicable collaboration, not only with the Board of Selectmen, but also with the community. We do need to do a better job of communication, and that is going to be one of our primary objectives going forward. We have some items that we have to clarify and move on with, but we do need to communicate better. And we will be starting that, introducing it at our next meeting on the 9th, and then in the new year, really drilling down on where we can improve that communication effort. And we welcome suggestions from the community on that and how they think we might better do that job. So I do, as chairman, I do want the Airport Commission to work with the Board of Selectmen. I think we can. I think we can do it in a very good way. I want to be able to work with the community as well. And I hope, and I reemphasize the word that going forward, that these relationships that the Airport Commission has, not only with the Board of Selectmen, but also with the town, is under amicable circumstances. We've already mentioned in the past, this evening, that there's been misinformation out there. There have been people who present information, not only in the newspaper, but even at our meetings, that is not factual, and it puts us in a position that we have to constantly defend ourselves as opposed to moving forward with the agenda that we have. And I hope we can make changes in that going forward. And we will listen. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will be able to change everything that we hear or everything that the community may want, but we will do our best to try to accommodate within the FAA regulations, within the MassDOT Airports Division regulations, and within the town regulations. And that way move forward and create an airport that is safe and secure and a viable element of this community. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other commissioners have questions for Pat? All right. We're going to turn to the public now. And I just want to remind everybody that we're asking that you limit your comments or your questions to 3 minutes so we can get through the list of folks that are raising their hand now. We have, I see about 7 people who have raised their hand. Are there any people that are on the call that are just using their phones that would like to speak? Could you just call out your names, please?
David Bixby.
I think, David, I have you already. I'm asking for people
Okay.
that, yeah, I see you. Anybody else?
ET? I
think I have you as well.
ET, you have me?
Yes,
you have me
I
on
do.
the phone or the iPad? I'm on the TV, the phone, and the iPad.
All right. Well, I see you one or the other. So you're okay, Ms. Tewksbury. Okay. So we're going to go through this. Let me just make sure I get a note of who has just popped on here. Okay. All right. Okay, we're going to start and just go down the line of folks as they have logged on. So we're going to start with Mr. Fulton. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you can hear me.
I can very well, thank you.
Good. I want to say that I agree with some of the things that Brother Costello shared with us tonight, but not everything that he said, and I guess he and I are not the first 2 lawyers in history that ever disagreed on an issue. The town of Chatham is a municipal corporation, and it under the charter exercises the executive authority of the town of Chatham, and it has an executive officer that assists it in that responsibility. It has something called a town manager. Attorney Costello said that the airport commission utilizes the town manager because it has no staff. If you read Chapter 90, Section 51E, you have to wonder if that's a position that can be substantiated. It says the airport commission may appoint an airport manager who shall be qualified by general management experience and aeronautical knowledge and shall be the executive officer of said commission. So under Chapter 90, Section 51E, they have a different executive officer than the municipal corporation known as the town of Chatham. It also says that the airport manager, this executive officer, shall be responsible to said commission for the proper maintenance and operation of the airport. And it says the commission shall appoint such other officers and employees as its work may require and shall fix the salaries of all officers and employees appointed or employed by it. So the airport commission has its own version of a town manager. It's called the airport manager under Section 51E. There's absolutely no basis for their using the town manager of the municipal corporation for anything. Secondly, it is true that the town manager under Section 4-7I of the Charter is the chief procurement officer for supplies, materials, and equipment. And then if you keep reading, it says, for all town departments. There are 41 departments in the town of Chatham. And guess what isn't a department of the municipal corporation known as the town of Chatham? The airport and the airport commission. So she is not the procurement officer for the airport commission. And she's given no procurement power at all for the airport. Finally, you learn something when you read other town charters. And I have read the town charters of the town of Harwich, Wellfleet, Hanover, and Pembroke. And all of those charters give to their town managers a power in their charters that the Chatham Town Charter does not give to its town manager, and that is the power to apply for or approve grants. The people the people of Chatham, in my opinion, were very wise to never give grant powers to their town manager, because grant contracts carry important consequential terms and conditions which are important to review, discuss, and debate with the benefit of public input by officials who are answerable to the people at the ballot box. So whoever decided not to give grant application power in Chatham to the town manager, I think was very wise.
Mr. Fulton, do you have final thoughts or a question? It's been 3 minutes.
Well, if I've used 3 minutes, just one last point.
Okay.
No public body, whether it be the Airport Commission or the Board of Selectmen, may make decisions or take actions outside of a duly noticed public meeting. I believe it was unlawful for Chairman Donovan to provide the town manager with an application for a $347,000 FAA grant and inform her, or anyone else for that matter, that the Airport Commission had approved an application for a $347,000 FAA grant. It never happened.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman.
Okay, any response to that, Pat? I think we're sticking by what we made as a presentation. I just want to note that that Howard has a town administrator form of government, not a town manager form of government. That is different in some respects. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fulton. Miss Tewksbury, I think you're next. Please proceed.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, good. I'm Edith Tewksbury, and I live on 91 George Ryder Road South. And this is a concern, a major concern I have with safety. When we moved to Chatham year-round 22 years ago, our real estate agent told us we were in the landing pad of the Chatham Airport. No problem. For years, small planes, 2 3-seaters, flew over our house, mostly from Memorial Day through Labor Day, and some in the fall. The last few years, the air traffic has increased dramatically. The air taxi should not be landing at the Chatham Airport. It should land at Hyannis Airport, which has an hour, it's 2 minutes, which has a 2 minutes, that's all I want. Which has
I think you need to ask a question about the governance of the airport. This is what this agenda item is.
Who controls the size planes landing? I have a video of a huge plane coming over our house. So who controls the size of an airplane that should be landing in Hyannis?
Pat, do you have that answer, or?
Sure. I can just offer generally the response that the nature or size of aircraft that can utilize the airport is dependent upon the physical improvements that exist at the airport, and it's an FAA regulated determination in conjunction with the Airport Commission. So that's all I can say on the point.
All right, with no concern about the nearby residents.
That is always a concern when those decisions are made.
Okay. Well, I hope some decision will be made on this air taxi. Thank you.
Thank you. The next questions are from Stephen Buckley. Welcome, Stephen.
Did you hear me? Jerry cut me off. I said, don't cut me off.
I might have a couple questions. Point of order, I guess. My 3 minutes include the answer or just the
No,
time I'm
for you.
asking a question?
Just your time.
Okay, thank you.
But before you get started, Stephen, I just want to remind people to please mute your audio. We're getting feedback from conversations, and it's difficult to conduct a meeting in that manner. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay, on the PowerPoint screen number 14, talking about chapter 100, that was very interesting to me, the idea that the town, I guess, from my understanding from what Mr. Costello said, was that promote that the town still has the authority, I guess, to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the public by preventing the creation, establishment, and maintenance of airport hazards. So I guess that sounds to me like if, and even though that has never been used before, I guess I'm curious to find out how that would actually happen, how the bylaw, of course, the whole bylaw is not there, but if it was determined that the proposals being made by the Airport Commission were amounting to what the town felt was hazardous to public welfare, then that sounds like there's a mechanism there for overriding or withholding or doing some mechanism for squelching the proposal. So if Mr. Costello could clarify that.
Pat?
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Buckley. Yeah, as Dean DeCastro noted during his comments, what Chapter 100 does is indicate that the town can exercise its police powers in order to preserve public health, safety, and welfare. It can do so by restricting the use of parcels outside the airport. And in that situation, pursuant to the bylaw, it says without compensation. That does not mean that any individual who felt that his or her property had been diminished in value as a result of an undue restriction on the property couldn't file an action asserting a regulatory taking and seek damages from the town in a superior court proceeding. So the primary tool that the town would have in that regard is the adoption of bylaws or regulations that could limit the use or the development, if you will, of parcels in and around the airport. The town does also have the pertinent right through the Airport Commission to take properties outside the boundaries of the airport for the purpose of preserving such public health, welfare, and safety interests. So that's an extreme measure, but I'm sure you're aware that that is something that, there has been some discussion of easements, and that is something that the commission would be authorized to undertake should it deem it appropriate.
Okay, and
just before you go to your next question, and we'll hold the time for you. I think Selectman Kokolas had a quick comment on as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick comment. I remember in my move to become associated with the Airport Commission as a selectman, there was a discussion with the then chairman, and my understanding was sometime in the past this has been used. The bylaw was used. The town went out and trimmed trees and paid for it out of their own operations funds. I don't know if maybe Peter can talk to that quickly or not, but that was my understanding, and it makes sense to be able to do that.
That would be a permissible action as well. Typically, you would seek the permission or authorization from the property owner before going onto their property, but the law does provide that the Airport Commission does have a right to access properties for the purpose of investigating potential hazards.
Great. Thank you. Stephen, do you have another question?
Yes, I do. First of all, a comment, I guess, the idea that Mr. Harrison was talking about public outreach and coming to better understanding about what what's going on. But if people, I think, understood that the goose is not quite cooked yet, and that the environmental assessment will actually be addressing a lot of things that Mrs. Tuxbury was talking about as far as quality of life. And so once the environmental assessment comes out, it covers social and economic, all aspects of the quality of life in Chatham. And I would ask people to wait until that came out and look at it and comment on that. And that will help, I think, address a lot of the issues that people are raising. That's basically I wanted people to say. And screen sharing, please use screen sharing at the commission thing, because when I ask for where does it say that, they're like, well, I don't know how to do a screen share. So please use screen sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, the next comment and questioner is David Bixby. Go ahead, Mr. Bixby. You may be mute, Mr. Bixby. Do you want to try unmuting your device,
And I was
please?
ready to do that, and then I forgot.
Okay,
Are
go
we okay
ahead.
now?
You are perfect.
All
Go right ahead.
I'm going to ask questions, and then you can respond later. I know this issue of who the sponsor is has gone round and round for about 7 years now. I thought it was well established that the sponsor is not the Airport Commission. It is the town of Chatham. And I believe the FAA somewhere is on record as having stated that. Every single FAA grant to date has been between the FAA and the town of Chatham, never the Airport Commission. The Airport Commission is, hang on a sec. The Airport Commission is only listed in generally as a contact. The other question issue I'd have is I find it hard to believe that a Board of Selectmen, an elected body, would not want to have a policy making influence or ability over something as important in a town in the middle of a bunch of residential communities, that they wouldn't want to have some policy influence there. And in response to Mr. Nicastro's comment, policy making is not running the airport. Policy and operations are two entirely different things. It's important that I think all members of the Board of Selectmen understand that. The last thing I'll comment on, because I just heard something that sounded a little disturbing to me. Did I hear someone say that the Airport Commission can pursue easements, navigation easements by eminent domain? Because I don't see their authority to do that anywhere. The town has it, Mass DOT has it, but not the Airport Commission. So you can respond.
Pat? Question again on the easement?
Okay, sure. To the latter point, as I read Chapter 90, Section 51G, it provides that the Airport Commission can take or acquire such easements and airport hazards outside the boundaries of an airport or airport site as may be necessary for the removal or the prevention of the establishment of any airport hazard. So that's a matter of general law.
And that is absolutely correct, but it does not say by eminent domain. The only authority that the Airport Commission has to take easements to take property by easement is by eminent domain is with the establishment of an airport.
I would suggest that the use of the word take the Airport Commission may so take or acquire such easements.
I would suggest that's probably would be highly controversial and would end up in court.
Yeah. Takings usually do.
Before.
Well, it's not.
Dean.
Yeah, just thank you, Madam Chair. My name was mentioned, so I'd like to come.
Sure.
This also goes back to something that Stephen Buckley brought up. I asked the question about Chapter 100 of the town bylaw, which Pat articulated on, because to me that provides an alternative tool to the Airport Commission to deal with obstructions in the, and improve safety of the airport and the public without having to resort to their authority to take property by eminent domain. And I disagree strongly with Mr. Buckley because, I'm sorry, with Mr. Bixby, sorry. I don't read the word establishment as being limited to the date of the creation of the airport. I think that goes to the ongoing existence of the airport. That's how I read the statute, and I suspect most courts would read it that way. And I just wanted to reiterate something Pat said earlier. The town is the sponsor of the airport, but Pat said the town acting by and through the airport commission. That's the precept. You may disagree.
I didn't hear that.
You may disagree,
I
Mr.
heard it say something quite different.
That's what he said. You're not a lawyer. He is.
Well, I'll
So,
ask one
excuse
more
me
question.
just a minute. This needs to go through the chair. Let's keep this
I'm sorry.
cordial. And if you have another question, Mr. Bixby, please go ahead.
Yeah, the fundamental question I wanted to ask, and I forgot right in the beginning, was did any of you go to the FAA and ask them flat out who in Chatham is the sponsor for the airport? Because ultimately that's who decides. Did anybody? Is anybody there?
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the question. Did anybody ask the FAA who the sponsor is in Chatham?
I think it's clear within the law who, but I'll let
anybody ask the FAA?
Well, I didn't ask, but I'm not sure if any commission members or boards did.
Because I think it's quite clear that it is not the airport commission, and I've written extensively on that, and I think I've forwarded that stuff to you, and I haven't seen anything to counter that that's in the law or the regulations.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions?
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, our next is Paula Lofgren. Welcome, Paula.
Hello there. Let me see if I can get this up and going.
Okay.
Are we there? Oh, hi. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everybody who put this together. Very, very comprehensive, answers some questions, makes other one come to the forefront. So I do have a couple of questions, but I have a comment on something that was said by members of the governing bodies. And one is about select person Nick Castro. Mr. Nick Castro and Mr. Costello both said that the Board of Selectmen can give direction to the Airport Commission by nature of a town meeting warrant article. And this past spring, the Airport Commission brought a town meeting warrant article to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen unanimously rejected their proposal for the environmental assessment. And 4 weeks later, or 5 weeks later, the application for that very same assessment that was rejected was signed and sent up to the FAA. So there is a bit of oversight and following direction that is just a point, not anything for discussion right now. My question is, in all of the slides that we have, you have the duties and responsibilities of the Board of Selectmen and the town manager and all. There is no slide that says what are the duties and obligations of the Airport Commission. The word of authority is used, that the Airport Commission has this and this and this as their authority. It doesn't say what they are responsible for and what their obligations are. And in particular, with regards to grant assurances, if the Airport Commission is the sponsor, which is still up for debate, then it is the Airport Commission's, as the sponsor, that is responsible for making sure that each and every one of those grant assurances is followed. And who is watching the store to make sure that indeed those grant assurances are followed. Chapter grant assurance number 19 of airspace is only one. Chapter 20 is land use and compatibility. And if you recall, Terry will, a few years back, Chatham was hit with 11 land use violations. So over the course of the history of the airport, the commissions before the people who are sitting there now had taken actions that were clearly in violation of those grant assurances. So where is the checks and balances to make sure that all of those are being addressed? So I have two requests. One is that a slide is created that says what is the obligation and the responsibilities of the Airport Commission, particularly with regards to making sure that those grant assurances are followed. My second request is actually for another meeting like this. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to put a future agenda request in, but it does have to do with grant assurances. I would like to request another meeting such as this with the Airport Commission and the Board of Selectmen to have a presentation based on the Chapter 100 Airport Approach Protection Map. That map, which was put there, has been noted, pretty much no development underneath that approach. So fast forward, and if you took a screenshot of the map now, the development that has happened underneath that airport approach, part of grant assurances is number 20 is compatible land use. And the airport and the town are supposed to make sure that all the land underneath that approach is compatible with the airport, and residential is not compatible. And so I would like to request just such an evening tonight to go over how we got from Chapter 100 in 1958 and where we are now, which is a crisis point between the residents underneath that approach and the sitting government right now. This is not something anybody at the meeting tonight has.
Paula, you're well over 3 minutes, so can we wrap it up, please?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do we want to throw up the chart that was created that has a little overview of the general governance Terry had created that might show a little more about the flow of who does what, where, and when? Terry, do you want to give us a little overview of this?
Yes, and hopefully everybody can see the chart that's up.
Yes, go ahead.
And then kind of working from the center out. So in the middle of this chart, we've got the Chatham Municipal Airport, basically the discussion, the focus of discussion this evening. And then the three dotted polygon shapes represent areas of state, again, working from the center out, local jurisdiction, and then federal jurisdiction and state jurisdiction. So what we tried to capture in this chart was basically a graphical representation of of the bullet points that were presented this evening. So, starting over, and hopefully people can see my cursor, I'm circling over, if we go back and what I started about building context originally, starting with the Chapter 90, where really the authority comes from. And I think one of the questions was, where are the duties of the airport? They're actually found in, I believe, 51D and E. So it's spelled out in the legislation. So from there, that's where the primary management authority, comes to the Airport Commission. And as we talked about, and Pat talked about in great detail, where the Selectmen has the appointment authority for the Airport Commission. Then we established a chart to show the other relationships and interrelationships between the Airport Management Services Agreement, which provides that on-site airport manager to satisfy MassDOT requirements. And then we have arrows going both ways for showing airport compliance between the Airport Commission and the Airport Management Service Agreement, and the same thing with the oversight with the airport manager feeding back to the Airport Commission and vice versa. And then to the right side of the local polygon, again, we have the town manager with authority that's derived from the town charter, showing that authority that's through the charter for financial administration authority. The town manager also has, through the charter, responsibility for town buildings, as the the property is ultimately owned by the town. And then the town manager also has roles in the compliance for the airport management service agreement and other specified approvals. And then on the far right box, the federal relationship, we've had a lot of discussion on the duties. And again, where the question of the sponsor's representative is clearly the town manager, as that's who the FAA contacts, showing the sponsor duties, primarily with grants, assurances, and compliance. So there was reference to the former land use compliance report, which technically it wasn't a violation of grant assurances. There was additional information provided, and there was no violation found of those grant assurances as part of that process in the corrective action plan. But that's where the FAA provides that direct connection with the town manager as the airport sponsor representative, and then the FAA also has a direct path for the airport manager for the relationship with some of the with the airspace regulations that Pat hit the highlight on, where there's a relationship between what the FAA has jurisdiction over, and it needs to coordinate that with the airport manager.
Okay,
Hopefully that kind of explains, but that was the attempt here to just lay out graphically what those primary bullets highlighted.
Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
You can take down the chart. Okay, we have 2, 4, 6, 8. We have 9 people left. I'm going to try that we get everybody in, but it is almost 8 o'clock, and we had tried to get this to 2 hours. I don't. So if you have questions that you'd like to speak, we'd appreciate it. Mr. Wilson, Tom Wilson, welcome. You're next.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if we could get the slide that had that approach chart back up on the screen. And while that's happening, I have a question for Attorney Costello. I'm somewhat confused. In 1949, the Board of Selectmen appointed an airport commission who executed an order of taking that got the land for the airport. Who owns the airport? Is my question.
The airport is owned by the town of Chatham.
And in your presentation on AIP grants, you referenced FAA Order 5138D. And in that, it says the following. It says, airport sponsors, the document is about grants. It says, airport sponsors are public agencies who own a public use airport. So if that's what the FAA says, how can it be that the airport commission is an airport sponsor and not the town?
No, I've never said the airport commission was the sponsor. I said the town of Chatham is the airport sponsor.
You did? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I thought you said that the airport commission was the sponsor and that they could get grants.
The town of Chatham, acting by and through the airport commission, is the sponsor.
So, can we have that chart up of the airport approach? Basically, what that shows is that in 1958, the town of Chatham and the airport commission were aware that there's an area around the airport that's going to be used for landings and takeoffs, and that some of that land should be protected. So my question is, if the Board of Selectmen kind of turn things over to the Airport Commission. In 1958, when that diagram was created, did the Airport Commission have the authority to acquire the lands at the end of the runway to enable more safe operations at Chatham?
Yeah, I can answer that. Yes, they did. All of the relevant provisions of Chapter 90, Section 51D at SEC were adopted in 1946, and they've been in effect ever since then. So they were applicable at that time, and as noted previously, Section 51G does authorize the Airport Commission to acquire easements for the purposes of safety outside the boundaries of the airport.
So there's an area at the end of the runways called runway protection zones that extend out about 1,000 feet. And we did have the opportunity as a town to acquire those through the powers that existed in general laws. And we as a town chose not to do that. My next question for Attorney Costello was, you used the phrase that the Board of Selectmen has purview over the Airport Commission. And could overrule. And I'm trying to think of an example, and the thing that pops in my head is one of the controversies in front of the town now is a new approach that requires a 3,200-foot runway, and we only have a 3,000-foot runway. Would something like that be an area where the Board of Selectmen could extend purview over the Airport Commission?
I would suggest not. What I indicated was that the Board of Selectmen did have a limited purview over the commission as the appointing authority for the commission, and pursuant to the board's general authority to make sure that laws and regulations are properly implemented. To the extent that the Board of Selectmen came to the determination that the Airport Commission was violating the law in some way, shape, or form, I would suggest that the board in that situation could take some level of action as a supervisory authority, but it's very limited in that regard.
And my last question is, did you ask the FAA who the sponsor of the Chatham Airport is?
Me personally?
Yes.
I've never asked them that question, but I've had several discussions with counsel for the FAA with respect to pending litigation, and it's always been clear to me that he understood the town of Chatham to be the airport sponsor.
Okay, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Shireen, you're muted.
Okay, I just want to remind everybody, we want to limit, we're trying to limit this to 3 minutes to get through all the questions that we have tonight. I appreciate people's brevity, if at all possible. Our next commenter is Carol Gordon. Welcome, Carol.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Shireen. My question's for Mr. Harrison. The Airport Commission has stated that one of its goals going forward is to work on better community relations. And so I'm wondering if that means that you will be appointing a community advisory committee as suggested by the Board of Selectmen.
I can answer that question for you at the next commission meeting.
Oh, it's terrific.
December 9th.
Okay.
It will be a topic of conversation.
All right, that sounds good. I'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Carol. The next speaker is Juris 35CC.
Okay, that's juris substance, yes.
Oh, hi, okay.
Yes. Terry Whalen said that the town manager was responsible for town buildings at the airport. What does that mean? What does responsibility or responsible for town buildings mean? Is the town manager responsible for the designing of the building, what it should be, or building, or what? Could Terry Whalen answer that question?
Terry?
Yeah, my reference, this is Terry, and Pat might want to jump in here as well as far as the charter, but the charter authority vests the maintenance of the town buildings with the town manager.
Yeah, no, I'll just add to that. It is a very common provision of charters and bylaws that the chief administrative officer of the town has general supervision and control of town buildings, and that would include matters such as maintenance and repair. In terms of capital investments or capital upgrades, improvements, that would lie with the governing body of the airport, which would be the Airport Commission.
All right, thank you. Elaine, you're next.
I had a second question. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. The other question was the town council said that the Board of Selectmen could give opinions and thoughts to the Airport Commission, but that the Airport Commission did not have to accept them. My question is, on the current airport master plan, the 2003 to 2023, the Board of Selectmen signed off on the master plan, so did the FAA, and so did the airport. So what's the purpose of the Board of Selectmen signing off on the master plan? There has to be something more of a commitment that the Board of Selectmen stands behind the mission statement for those 20 years, that this is what our plan is. So this is more than the Board of Selectmen offering opinions or comments. They have codified through the airport master plan, this is what we envision the airport to be. That's my question. Because in the current master plan, the Airport Commission has totally ignored the mission statement that the Board of Selectmen signed back in 2003. So I question Costello's comments that the Board of Selectmen can only provide opinion or thoughts. There has to be more to it.
Terry, I mean, Pat, I'm thinking of that sort of issue at something similar to the mooring regulation. When we're working on mooring regulations and whose authority and whatever, we don't adopt it, but we endorse it. I think of that as a similar sort of scenario that might have occurred in 2003.
I would agree, Madam Chair. It's certainly not going to hurt the chances of the FAA approving the master plan if the Board of Selectmen endorses it affirmatively, which is likely what happened in that case. And I don't believe that the Board of Selectmen's endorsement would be a legal prerequisite to it going to the FAA for approval.
That was not my question. What commitment does the Airport Commission have to follow the mission statement that the Board of Selectmen has endorsed, that FAA has endorsed, and that the Airport Commission at that time has endorsed? This is how we want the airport to grow. What is the obligation to future airport commissions to that master plan? Do we just throw it out?
No, I don't think that any action on a particular master plan upgrade is binding prospectively. I think each proposed master plan upgrade is viewed by the FAA on its own merit. As long as it's properly submitted by the sponsor, which is the town of Chatham acting by and through its Airport Commission, I think the FAA will consider it. To the extent that the Board of Selectmen may oppose it or endorse it, it could very well be influential in some way, shape, or form in the approval process, but I don't think it's a prerequisite one way or the other. I think the Airport Commission has the authority to submit.
Maybe I was not clear. That was not my question.
Juris, I think your 3 minutes you're well over 3 minutes. So
he did not answer my question.
Well, we're going to move on to the next questions. Thank you. Elaine, you're next.
Yes, thank you. Town council initially did say that the sponsor was the airport commission, and then there was a chart that said the town manager had sponsored duties. And it was only when Mrs. Wilcox asked if she could be personally sued that we clarified that it is the town of Chatham. I think it's pretty clear that the sponsor should be the Board of Selectmen for the following reasons. The AIP grants state that the sponsor is the public entity that has the legal and financial responsibility to carry out assurances and obligations. The Home Rule Charter states that the inhabitants of the town of Chatham shall be known as the town of Chatham. Therefore, the airport is owned by the inhabitants, the taxpayers, who have elected the Board of Selectmen to represent us as a sponsor, and all that entails, not simply delegating that authority through the airport commission and not the town manager, as it's the taxpayer inhabitants as the owner who are ultimately legally and financially responsible for assurances and grants. Any decisions that impact the safety, environment, and quality of life of all the residents of Chatham should rightly be under the purview and direction of the selectmen, with all the power that that entails as sponsor, and not the town manager or the airport commission or the non-resident airport manager, who is the primary financial recipient of profits generated by the airport, even though it's owned by the town. Chapter 90 says the airport commission's primary authority is to manage, operate, and maintain the airport on behalf of the town. That would be us, not the pilots, not the airport manager, but the inhabitants. Yet for years, well before this Board of Selectmen was empowered, in my view, the airport has been more as a private business rather than a municipal property, with little regard for the legitimate and serious concerns of residents or the very potential negative impact of their decisions and the master plan on our community. I cannot think of any other town entity, board, or commission that has such autonomous, unfettered power as was described by town council to potentially adversely impact the town of Chatham with no constraints. I hope that will change. Improving communications of decisions after the fact is not sufficient. The public should be part of the decision-making process. And I don't think an environmental assessment is going to tell us what we already know is wrong and of concern, that it is potentially dangerous for the people who live there. And I think we have to be more involved. So if I do have a question, it is, who's the sponsor? Is it the airport commission, the town manager, or the inhabitants, who are the town of Chatham, not just as some kind of figurehead? I think the Board of Selectmen represent us, and they need to take more control over what goes on with the airport commission, because it's for the safety of the entire community. Thank you.
Thanks. Question, Pat, do you want to reiterate the?
Sure, I'll be happy to clarify. And the airport sponsor for federal grant application purposes is the town of Chatham as a municipal entity. The town of Chatham as a municipal entity operates by and through the airport commission with respect to maintenance and operation of the airport. But it is the town of Chatham itself, the governmental entity, that is the sponsor.
Okay, thank you, Pat. All right, thank you, Elaine. Our next person up is Margaret Thompson. Welcome, Margaret. Margaret, either you're muted or
I think my husband needs to go first. I think he was.
You're next in the queue. So
Okay.
do you want to go first, and then he's down the line, unless you want to defer to him.
What I wanted to show you.
Margaret, are you speaking, or go ahead?
I'm sorry. This was this is what it's like to live underneath.
Margaret, do you have a question about the governance of the airport for us today?
My question is, who is going to take responsibility for the safety and health of the inhabitants underneath the air of the airways when planes can fly over houses that close with that amount of noise and provide that amount of danger. When I was driving on Route 28 the other day, this plane came over. I thought it was going to crash on me. That's not acceptable, and the Board of Selectmen need to take charge, because the airport authority, the airport commission, is clearly not taking any notice of what the inhabitants say.
Thank you. Pat, is it the FAA that maintains the safe of the navigable airspace? Is that who?
Yes, that the FAA has jurisdiction over regulation of navigable airspace. It would be within the purview of the Airport Commission to consider issues relative to public safety resulting from airport operations. So I do think that that would be a hybrid jurisdiction between the local authority at the Airport Commission level and the federal authority at the FAA.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Margaret. Jane Wilson, you're next. Welcome, Jane.
Can you hear me?
I can, thank you. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the strongest point I want to make is that we, the residents and homeowners, are the real shareholders in the master plan. It will impact us for the next 20 years. Chatham is a densely developed, congested town that has a small airport, almost entirely surrounded by many homes and several businesses. I'm going to make 3 recommendations to the Board of Selectmen and ask them to seriously consider these options, since it appears to me, based on what I've heard tonight, that the Board of Selectmen are deferring the responsibility to the Airport Commission. I said, first of all, we need to start all over again, and we need to work together. I am recommending that the Board of Selectmen appoint an Airport Advisory Commission to be established by the board immediately. It should be made up of homeowners and residents who are directly impacted by this 20-year plan. This board should act as a liaison to the Airport Commission and include 1 or 2 Airport Commission members. This body should act as an equal authority in the writing and submission of this airport plan. This is important. Plus, the Airport Commission had committed to create this anyway. Secondly, I really think that we need to reevaluate the makeup of our Airport Commission. The commission needs to be made up of homeowners and residents in direct proportion to the number of pilots and owners who reside here. There are a whole lot more homeowners than there are pilots and plane owners. This would enable the residents' input to be made regarding the airport's development for all, not just a few people who recreationally own and fly planes. I think also there should be term limits to the commission positions, say 3 terms, so that new ideas can be considered as new people come in. Let's not keep it an old boys club. And third, I think we need to, the board should consider hiring a new consulting firm.
Jane, do you have a question about the governance of the airport?
I have 2 more sentences on here.
Okay.
Gale Associates has received tens of thousands of dollars paid by the taxpayers to build a snow truck removal building at the cost of over $100,000 to the town that isn't even big enough to hold the truck with the plow attached.
I think you're off topic here, Jane. We are talking, the agenda item is the governance. I really think this is something you can bring up with the Airport Commission at their next meeting. Your recommendations.
My recommendation is that the Board of Selectmen step up to the plate and create a commission that will fairly represent the town, because this master plan that's being presented is going to affect other residents.
Okay, I would like to add, I would just like to inform the general public who might not know that presently the Airport Commission is made up of 4 homeowners and 3 pilots. And I just want to say that that has been a shift and a change that the Board of Selectmen has consciously made in their appointments in the last year and a half, 2 years. So,
but don't you think that?
But I'm not going to debate this with you. This isn't a night of debating. So if you do have a question, I'll allow you the time for a question. But I think other than that, we'll move on to the next speaker.
Well, then I guess in relationship to that, I would just suggest that don't you think that pilots have a biased opinion towards their needs versus the homeowners? That's how I'll end my discussion.
Okay.
And I'd like you to seriously consider us homeowners as shareholders in what's being developed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Our next speaker is Michael Thompson. Michael?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to highlight the fact that the FAA actually requires governance by the sponsors of airports, and they've even issued a sponsor guide. The guide says airport planning should be consistent with local goals. It says airport sponsors need to take responsibility for the master plan. The guide indicates that a master plan must present to the public a realistic plan which addresses all relevant issues and satisfies local, state, and federal regulations. Funding eligibility is critically dependent on early coordination between airport owners, I emphasize owners, and the FAA, and having an approved airport layout plan. The airport owner is responsible for preparing an environmental assessment. An advisory circular specifies noise as part of compatibility planning for airports. The guide points out that many environmental assessments contain analyses of airport noise, compatible land use, social impacts, and induced socioeconomic impacts. In fact, the FAA requires public and community involvement in discussing noise when assessing economic versus social trade-offs. The FAA is adamantly against unacceptable, incompatible land uses in the overshoot, undershoot danger zones, the RPZs as they call them, designed to protect people and property. In Chatham, there are about 10 homes along with stores, offices, and roads already in these forbidden zones. The FAA said in the 1983 advisory that residential developments around an airport would ultimately cause it to close. I could emphasize that, would cause it to close.
I think we need to have a question about the governance.
Okay, I've got one, it's coming up. Now, after many years of sponsored neglect, the residential communities all around the airport as predicted. The sponsor, namely the town, has failed in every single one of these requirements in the sponsor guide. The town has the right to exercise governance over the airport and agreed not to give that up every time it signed those FAA grant assurances. The sponsor guide states that FAA determinations are not intended to override local authorities in response to locally determined needs and values. That could be good news for sponsor governance to determine the future of Chatham Airport. So the question is, do you, Selectmen, as the chief policy-making entity, intend to define local goals and exercise such governance over our airport, as Elaine explained? Thank you.
Thanks. Peter, do you want to speak to that a little bit? Peter Kokolis, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Well, I was going to say something at the end.
I know you had planned to.
Yeah, just in general, I'm going to make 2 points right now that because of who I am and what I've done, I think that the question about do I believe pilots are biased? No, they bring a separate position and they have a specialty that they bring that doesn't limit their ability to be fair. You could say the same thing about a lawyer on a board, or you could say the same thing about a planner who's on the planning board. I understand how people are concerned about that, The other thing is the noise that happens right now. Remember that you have a VFR airport. I'm not saying that it should change, but you have a VFR airport that allows airplanes to come in the way they're coming in. Whether that's right or wrong, I mean, I agree. It's not. I don't like noise on here, but in general, what is it that we are going to do? I'll make this point, and I have always had an issue with the way that the airport commission has approached things, and it's their history. That's the way they have been doing it. Let me say that, you know, we did this. We made sure that we had an event like this, and an agenda item, which was a single agenda item with a joint meeting with the public to discuss directly what the roles and authority are of both the Board of Selectmen, the Airport Commission, and the town manager. And our legal counsel has provided his opinion and his learned, let's call it, opinion. Now, it's understandable that there's been a lot of confusion about who does what. And it's understandable given that I'd call it a matrix management kind of structure, or matrix policy of the responsibilities that are specified by the federal government, the FAA, the state laws, and local regulations. All those are impacting on what we do. And I understand what the concerns are for the public, and I think we need to address a lot of those concerns, but we need to do it in a way that is that we, the Board of Selectmen, and each of the organizations are following a legal responsibility. To me, is not unlike, as the chairman said, unlike what we do with our regulatory committees, statutory responsibility. Now, yes, the Airport Commission does have broader responsibilities, but you look at the Zoning Board of Appeals or the Planning Board, they make decisions that impact this town greatly. And we've heard how many times that the town is being built up in a way that it shouldn't be. And those are decisions that are made by regulatory boards. It is inappropriate, in my opinion, for the Board of Selectmen to be involved with those decisions, to tell them how they should do it. That doesn't mean we can't influence it, and doesn't mean that the members of the board don't understand what the town wants. So as a selectman who is very concerned about this airport, very concerned that we do it safely, has a background somewhat in aeronautics and aerospace, I think that we need Board of Selectmen and each of the Airport Commission to follow the rules that have been laid out. And why do I say that? I think it would be a very serious concern on my part as a selectman voted into this town not to take our town council's opinion very seriously. You may not agree with everything that he has said, and that's your right. But at the same time, I have a certain responsibility, and a Board of Selectmen have a certain responsibility, and not responsibility, and will be held accountable for it, I'm sure, by the town and by FAA. So let me be clear, though. You know, we have a legal foundation that we've been given. We can look closer at that. But let me be clear: the Board of Selectmen appoints members to the Airport Commission, and we can remove members from the Airport Commission. But at the same time, the Airport Commission has a certain responsibility, you know, that were identified to maintain, manage, and operate the airport. Yet, we put citizens of Chatham on that commission. And those citizens have to represent the citizens of this town. So there's no reason that this airport commission and the group that they are, that as a group would come up with options that would go to the FAA that are inconsistent or incompatible with what this town wants it to be done. And I'll give one example. You have approaches. Everyone's focusing on approaches. You haven't even decided what those are going to be. But why would an airport commission put options that they know the town would not want, or that the FAA probably would not approve? It is the responsibility of each commissioner to represent the town, and it's a balancing act. The safety of the airport is important, and the safety of the town is important. And the safety of the town really does come first. At the same time, it's important to understand what a safe airport really means and what a safe approaches mean. So thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't want to say this now, but.
No, I know, but I think it answers the question then, Mr. Thompson. And I'm really sorry, your time was up, Mr. Thompson, with your last question. So we're going to move on to the next speaker, who is Ron Mandersheed. I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name incorrectly. You may correct me if you want. Ron, are you prepared?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I want to cede my 3 minutes to Jim Fulton. Thank you.
Well, we're not doing that. If you have a comment, we will.
So if we're not doing that, let me at least add a comment to what's been stated. So I think the conversation has been very good. I think issues have been identified in the conversation that can be pursuant to this meeting. I think one of the topics that has not been addressed very clearly in this meeting is fiscal responsibility for the town. The fiscal responsibility for the town resides with the selectmen. It does not reside with the airport commission. The airport commission cannot commit funds that are not approved by the selectmen. So you have multiple authorities by which you can act, not only appointing and removing authority, but you also have fiscal authority. You also have moral authority, representing the citizens of this town. The citizens elected you, and I know, Madam Chairperson, you understand this, to represent all of the citizens of Chatham and to try to bring the very best to them. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, our next speaker is Pete McIsaac. Mr. McIsaac? If you're trying to speak, you may be on mute. Could you unmute your phone, your speaker, please?
Hi, guys. Sorry about that.
No worries. Sure.
Thanks so much. I called in the last one a month or so ago, and this forum has been a lot more constructive. So I appreciate that. The last one, I think the commissioners were somewhat hostile and dismissive to a lot of the points that have been made by a lot of the folks tonight. And I appreciate, Peter, your comments a few minutes ago, and take you at your word that you don't like noise and that you're acting for the town residents. So I appreciate that. I do have a couple questions, because I know, Sherry, you're conscious of having focus on questions. People earlier asked about the environmental impact statement, which the town did not approve, and then it seems like there was an end run by the commission to get funding and approval for that. I'm not going to question the legality of that, because I don't want to get into those points, but do the selectmen think it was appropriate for that end run, as I phrase it, to occur?
Does anybody have an opinion about that would like to speak to it?
Madam Chair, I'll make a comment.
Okay.
The warrant article that came to us was for a small amount of money. Well, small, 25 million or so out of the total that was would be approved. And in it, at that time, I remember saying that an environmental assessment, I don't understand what it's going to be for. I'd like to understand what it's going to be involved with. And I thought that it might have been premature. Having said that, we all voted that one down. What happened afterwards, as far as getting a grant to do an assessment They were legally allowed, as I understand it, to be able to do that because they used an airport layout plan, which was appropriate. When the FAA came back and with the approval, because it came out of CARES as a CARES funding, that when it came back, there was a clear understanding that the airport master plan had not been completed, and that they would get the money for the assessment, but to come back with with a final master plan, and that airport layout plan then could be changed. So, I'm sort of betwixt and between. I don't think that they did anything illegal, but at the time that I voted on it, which was the September before it happened, I was not convinced that we were at a position we could do it.
Thanks, Dean.
Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you. Dean, you have your hand
Sherry,
up. So
Hey, Sherry, I had
it's
about 30
Shireen.
seconds to speak. Shireen, I'm sorry, I had about 30 seconds. So if I could, to cut to the chase, I didn't think it was appropriate. I don't think submitting the plans without the sponsor approval was appropriate. And I'm not sure what the end game of the commissioners are, the airport commissioners. So I guess the question for you guys is, do you think the airport commission is running a little bit rogue or roughshod, as apparently everyone else, the townspeople, sound like on this call? Do you think they're running roughshod and need a little more control and input from you guys as selectmen, which that's what Jane seems to be saying, Margaret seems to be saying, everyone's saying. And before you answer that, I understand that there are viewpoints that might differ by pilots, but that seems to be an extreme minority here compared to all the voices you're hearing and would hear if you had another meeting. So I'm not sure although there are different views, I'm not sure there's really proportionality to it. And the last point I'd say is Margaret mentioned the noise pollution. There's of course hazardous waste that could occur. And I'm not sure if you guys as selectmen representing the townspeople are cognizant at all times that Chatham is a jewel on the Cape that people from all over the U.S. travel to, and from Europe and all over the world. And I think if we take an approach where, well, the commissioners want to expand the airport, they want more jets, I'm not sure who that's serving at the end of the day. It's not serving the people, the townspeople on this call, and I just want to make sure you guys remember that as our selectmen.
I appreciate what you're saying. I don't think the airport commission is looking for more jets. I think that we'll be hearing from them. But, I do want to speak to the effort that we've been making over the course of this last couple of years. And that has been, we have been hearing the public about their frustration around the commission. We've approached the commission with suggestions on things they could do to improve their communications relationship with the people that were attending the meetings. We held several meetings. I know that Selectman Nicastro has been involved in meetings. Selectman Kokolas has been involved in meetings. I have been involved in meetings. I'm pretty sure Corey and Jeff as well have talked to the public about this and the commission. And most recently, we have done this. We have brought the commission together with us to create a better sense of who does what, when, where, and how we can all work together in some capacity. So I think that sort of speaks to some of the things that you're mentioning there, Mr. McIsaac. But I see Dean's hands up, and I know he would like to comment a bit on some of your comments. You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to address the question that was asked about environmental assessment, but since several other topics have been brought up in the last few moments, I'd like to do this bit scattershot. It's kind of humorous to me to hear people talk about the presence of pilots on the commission. I listened to the portions of the last, and people were raising questions as if to suggest there wasn't enough aeronautical experience on the commission. It's also interesting and convenient, I think, to cite the FAA to us when it suits people's arguments and object to the FAA's direction to the town that we had to allow skydiving. With respect to the environmental assessment, I don't think, and I did look at the minutes, I don't think the Board of Selectmen ever took a vote on that. It was presented to us, and we balked at the suggestion that the town would provide $25,000 in matching funds because, and I can speak for myself, I thought it was premature. I don't see how you can do an environmental assessment of something
when it's not been established. We've heard multiple variations of what the Airport Commission, and this is a criticism of the Airport Commission. Were they going to take 46? Were they going to take 46 easements, 15 easements, 6 easements, 9 easements? The last figure I heard was 22 easements. I think the Airport Commission needs to get its act together in terms of deciding what it wants to do and do a better job communicating to the public, as Selectman Dyken said, about their decision making. And with respect to the advisory committee suggestion that the Board of Selectmen made, I watched the Airport Commission meeting back in, I think it was March, the last one before you broke for COVID. The commission took a vote to create that commission. It was a 5-2 vote, I think. So that's the record. And with respect to the comment about fiscal control or fiscal authority, we do have that. And I mentioned that before. And I think when the Airport Commission goes astray, they risk that the selectmen are not going to support their proposals, their requests for funding. They have no money of their own other than the $40,000 or whatever it is in their fund. They don't have money to pay for eminent domain damages. So there needs to be better coordination. But I come back to the point that Mr. Costello made. It is not the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen to run the airport. And that's my position. And I'm going to stand by that. And I will honor the opinion of town council, even if I disagree with the opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Huntley, you had your hand up, so I think you wanted to comment.
Yeah, whoops. Oh, I'm open. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I did. With all due respect to Mr. Nicastro, the motion on the 10th of March was to accept, it was moved to accept implementation of a Citizens Advisory Committee subject to consideration by the chairman and vice chairman with respect to all the aforementioned questions and putting forward a proposal that would be discussed at a subsequent Airport Commission meeting. That was seconded and the vote was 3-2. We are planning to do that. Now, we didn't say we were going to implement a Citizens Advisory Committee. We just said we were going to look at it at a subsequent meeting. At that point, COVID hit and we went into hibernation for 7 months. So the last meeting on the 28th, and that's the minutes I read from that meeting, because that's when they were finally published. That's how things came out. And we will be addressing this at our December 9th meeting. But we did not make a promise to have a Citizens Advisory Committee. And I'm not sure whether we will or whether we won't. It will be up for discussion at the December 9th meeting.
Thank you, Huntley. I hope you create one. I think it will benefit everybody if you do.
You're muted, Shreen.
Trying to not shuffle papers in everybody's ears. Thank you, Huntley. Thank you, Dean. Our next speaker is Mr. Dennis Glover. Mr. Glover, welcome. Can you unmute? Mr. Glover, I think you need to unmute. There you go.
There we are. I just want to thank everybody.
Can you speak up a little louder?
I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and especially the wonderful chairman for being so patient with what's going on here. A lot of things I want to say. Can you hear okay?
Serene, we just can't hear.
Yeah, we just can't hear you. Can you turn your volume up? Try that.
Does that work?
Now, can you get a little closer to your computer?
How about this?
No.
Is that better if I'm up here?
That's better. Yep.
Okay.
Yell loud.
I want to thank everybody for coming and for the patience of our wonderful chairman. She's been very good about this. You certainly have a wonderful disposition and ability to conduct these meetings. So
thank you. A little louder, Mr. Glover.
Okay, I'll turn this around this way.
There you go.
There are a lot of things to say. I think there's still a good deal of confusion and more meetings are needed. But I'll just comment one thing about Terry's chart, where he shows the only ability of the Board of Selectmen is to appoint. And someone else made the point. I think there are a lot of other abilities and rights that the Board of Selectmen have. And I would like you to consider that. It's not only moral, but also to bring together meetings like this, that more things can be discussed, that need more clarification. I think there's a lot of role that can be played there, and I look forward to that in the future. I know it looks like a good idea just to delegate it all to the Airport Commission, and that's a management procedure, but I'm not sure it's wholly appropriate right here. Anyway, thanks to everybody.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Glover. Appreciate your comments. Our last person with their hand up is Carol, and I think this might be Dr. Bliss. Is this Dr. Bliss?
Yes, it is, Shireen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome.
Thank you it's past my bedtime, so I'm going to make my question very
okay.
I was disappointed, I must say, that the Select Board appointed a pilot to the Airport Commission, and I'm not going to reiterate why, but I was under the impression that you were looking for a more diverse.
We just lost you.
I was under the impression that you were looking for a more diverse committee, so that seemed a little disingenuous to appoint a pilot. I heard your comments, but that said, I have a very specific question. Terry Whalen, under his presentation, under the funding overview slide, mentioned the airport manager role and responsibilities. And I noticed he kind of glided over, didn't mention that the airport manager is also the fixed-based operator, which is the same person. And I would like you to, as a group, both the Airport Commission and the Board of Selectmen, to explain to the public how this is not a conflict of interest. I know there's conflict of interest, as people have pointed out, and everyone, a planner on a planning board, but this is a fiscal conflict of interest. And I want to know if the town officials are okay with this. And after you answer that, I'd like to know who from the town oversees this arrangement, looks at the books. I'm not accusing anyone of being illegal or mismanagement. I just think it needs to have a lot more transparency. And I'll end that by saying good night, sleep well, and please answer my questions.
Thank you, Carol. Pat, do you want to speak to the authority of the airport manager? And maybe Jill can weigh in a little bit on some of what Carol had asked.
And also the fixed-based operator as well.
Okay. Pat?
Yeah, thank you, Shireen. The airport manager situation in Chatham is not, in my view, the airport manager scheme that's envisioned in Chapter 90. The airport manager is not an employee of the town. He's a contractor, and he has certain duties and responsibilities under his contract. He's compensated according to the terms of the contract. He does fulfill some of the, let's call them traditional functions that an in-house airport manager would fulfill. Yet on the other hand, he does have independent and separate business interests. I know the question of conflict has come up, a few times over the course of the last few years. We have advised him to be cognizant of potential conflict issues. I've spoken with his counsel about that. I'm not sure whether she pursued it or rendered an opinion to him on it. To my knowledge, there's no actionable conflict of interest at this point in time under the current scheme, but it's a contract that's awarded and granted by the Airport Commission, and that's where that stands. I'll let Jill speak to it as well.
Well, I do think that by showing his records and making them public, that the Board of Selectmen has some authority over him for that as a contractor. And I think that would eliminate anybody's questions of inappropriate physical arrangements. Mm-hmm. And I'll shut up now, though, but thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Carol. Jill?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the airport management contract, he's actually not compensated. He pays the town as the fixed-based operator and also serves as the airport manager. And he does have a contract, and the contract was signed by me in addition to the Airport Commission, and Pat Costello, Town Council, had participated in that contract negotiation. So funds are through me as the fiscal agent, come into the town, and it's administered through our finance department. So the payment is per schedule established in the contract, and whatever records are required through the agreement are also included with that transmittal. So that is information that's contained in the accounting office, and I don't believe anything would be considered not a public record for what he does give us with his quarterly, I think it's quarterly submittals. So that's
Okay,
it.
thank you, Jill. Huntley, you want to add into that in any manner?
Just quickly, and this is probably a question that should go to the town council. As a private business, which the airport manager has at the airport. In fact, he runs several businesses under the auspices of being the airport manager. And that's through the management services contract as well. Because it's a private business, even though he's running that business contractually on town property, are his records private or are they public, other than what he's required to submit to the town?
I'm sorry. I guess I can't keep my mouth shut. How much of the AMPU was his idea, though? Because that benefits his businesses quite profitably with the new fuel tank and other equipment. And I will be.
Okay, and I'm going to ask that you go through the chair to speak, please, rather than asking out. But Huntley, you want to finish? Or Pat was.
Yeah, Pat.
Okay.
Thanks, Shereen. He fulfills a dual role under the contract he has now, and as a fixed-base operator. I would suggest that documents that are generated or received solely in his capacity as a private business would likely not be public records. However, any documents that are generated or created by the airport manager in his capacity as such, as airport manager for the town of Chatham, would clearly be public records. And again, without talking about specific records or documents, it's hard to be more specific than that.
Thank you, Pat. Peter? Okay.
Thank you. This is for Pat, and I'll be very quick. It's something that's been brought up a couple of times. The words are important. We've heard that the Board of Selectmen have delegated their authority, responsibility to the Airport Commission. Is that true? Are we following state requirements according to Chapter 90? Do we have the delegation authority, or is we just meeting the requirements of the law?
No, quite frankly, Peter, what happened was in 1949, town meeting, the legislative body of the town, determined that the town should have an airport commission, thereby delegating the duties and responsibilities for operation of the airport to the commission. To the extent there was no commission in town, the Board of Selectmen, as the chief executive officer of the town, could have exercised some of the authority that the airport commission has right now. So the delegation is in that sense only, and it's more a matter of the legislative body of the town meeting voting to accept those provisions of law, and then the Board of Selectmen appointed the airport commission, whereby it would have delegated all authority under Chapter 90 to the commission.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thanks. All right. I don't see any other hands up right now, so this is going to conclude our public comment period. And I want to thank everyone for their comments tonight and their questions. And I'm going to bring it back to the Airport Commission for some final thoughts. I do want to remind everybody it is 8:45. We nowhere made the 2-hour mark. We're heading into 3 hours. It's a lofty goal, but we always try to be efficient. So I'm going to bring it back for final comments. I'm going to turn it over to Huntley, who can call on his board, and he can comment at his appropriate time. Okay, Huntley.
Okay, thank you. I'll just poll the commissioners who are still here. I think Commissioner Donovan had to leave early. Oops, sorry. Wait. There we go. All right, that's better. So Commissioner Galen, have you got any comments?
No, other side from saying that, thank you, Pat and Terry, for the great work you put in, prepare the documents, the presentations, and answer the questions. It was very helpful to me. I learned a lot tonight, despite having been on the commission for 3+ years now. I learned a lot tonight and clarified a lot of questions in my own mind. And for that, I appreciate all the work you did and all the time and the time of the public to come here and pay attention. Appreciate that too. Thank you.
Commissioner Owens. You might need to unmute. Nope. Can't hear you.
How about now?
There you go.
Yeah, I thank Terry and Pat for the presentation and Shireen for running the meeting. It was a lot of information that I think everybody needs to digest. And I hope a lot of people out there, especially the general public who maybe hasn't sat in or listened to many commission meetings, got some more, there was a lot of information for them to digest. And I think there was a lot of clarity in the information. I hope everybody takes some time to digest it before they react.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Burke. I don't know, he may have left. I'm not sure. Is he in the queue?
I don't see him.
No, I don't see him either. Okay. Commissioner Wilcox?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Chairman, I wanted to thank you very much and the Board of Selectmen for all the information that they put together. And Attorney Costello, I very much appreciate your help as well. And as Huntley said, I hope that we can work together to make this a more collaborative effort. And again, I thank you for your time, effort, and look forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cortese.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman Shireen and Chairman Huntley and everyone who put this together. I learned a lot tonight. I look forward to working on the commission and everyone have a great night.
And finally, a final word. Again, thank you to everybody. I know it's late and I won't go into details. I think you all know how I feel about this. We clarified some things tonight that were very, very important, not only for the commissioners, for the Board of Selectmen, town manager, everybody. It was extremely important, as well as the community. And I hope going forward that, as I said earlier this evening, that we can all kind of work collaboratively and together with this. And I will reiterate, there will be things and decisions that are made, just like with the Board of Selectmen, that people may not like, but at the same time, we hope that in the effort of safety for the community, safety for the flying public, that we can come up with plans for this airport that going forward are the best possible plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Huntley. Okay, I'm going to pull it back to my board and see if we have any comments from, I know that several of you made some substantial comments during the question period. Does anybody have any comments that they'd like to add before we close? Dean, Corey, Jeff, Peter, any comments? Dean, Go ahead, Dean.
Was up.
Jeff had his hand up first, Shereen.
He did. Okay, I missed it. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your steady hand at the helm as chairwoman this evening. It's not an easy job to do what you did. It was laudable to think we could even complete it under 2 hours. So anyway, you did a great job, and I really appreciate your effort. You've made it a kind of a hallmark of your chairmanship to have a focused meeting on an issue, and I think it's very helpful to remain focused on one issue. Hopefully we can do the same on other burning issues here in town. And this is a burning issue. It's been burning out there for a while, pre-COVID, and now hopefully, we're getting near to post-COVID. But just a couple of comments after listening. I listened very carefully to everybody, and I looked at that chart very carefully, and I appreciated Selectman Kokolas's comment about how a matrix organization can sometimes diffuse responsibility. I think it's a very appropriate and very insightful comment. And so kind of as a selectman, that's kind of where I land, if you will. Where, are we in charge? I don't want to run the airport. You don't want me running the airport, but can we create policies that allow an airport to be run sensibly, with common sense and safely? And I think that's ultimately our charge. And I think ultimately that's the charge of the Airport Commission as well. And I certainly heard, and I know I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but I did hear from Chairman Harrison that they would be taking up the issue of an advisory board at their meeting on the 9th. And I would hope that they would vote affirmatively and positively on that request. This Board of Selectmen did make that request some time ago. And I would also hope if they did that those that are appointed to that advisory board and those that sit in the audience at those meetings and have input would do so with an open ear and listen to what the airport commissioners are saying and what they're trying to accomplish. And also vice versa, that the airport commissioners would listen very carefully to that advisory board and also those in the audience that wish to speak. I read through some of the stuff from the airport commission yesterday and tonight even, and a lot of it made an awful lot of sense to me. They're trying to operate a safe airport here, and they're also trying to embrace the future. And we as citizens are trying to limit the amount of noise we have running over our heads and make the airport equally as safe. So our interests aren't mutually divergent. So we need to really come to a point where we have agreement rather than divergence. And that and there are going to be pain points along the way, as Chairman Harrison pointed out, and as we've all experienced in our public lives. But the airport's been there for 90 plus years, and you know what? It's going to be there another 90. So let's get on with it, and let's develop a plan that meets all most of our needs, and move forward here. Okay, those are my thoughts this evening, and I thank you for your time. An excellent discussion, a lot of good comments. Really, the public is wonderful to hear, and it's good to have their input as well as our board, which I respect greatly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Dean, you had your hand up next.
Thank you, Shereen, and thank you for putting this together, you and Terry and Pat, and I appreciate the Airport Commission. I think the problem we had as a Board of Selectmen, at least I felt this back when we met with to discuss the plan. The only people in attendance from the commission in the audience was one of our live meetings, were the chair and maybe the vice chair, and I think the full commission really didn't have the benefit of being able to hear a conversation with the Board of Selectmen, and so we've done that tonight and with the public. So my thanks to everyone who participated, especially to the members of the public. There is an awful lot to digest, as people have said. My message to the Airport Commission is, I think they hear this, is that they have a serious responsibility. They have a lot of authority, a lot of power, just as the zoning board has, for example. And it has to be exercised with wisdom and prudence and discretion. And I think Huntley has articulated this in a collaborative community spirit. My message to the general public is following up on something that Peter said. Words are important. We've been asked by various people for the selectmen to, quote, take back the control of the Airport Commission. Well, there's nothing to take back. We haven't given it away. It is established by the statutory scheme where the authorities lie, as Mr. Costello has articulated. So I think that's really important. People need to proceed with a common understanding of what the rules of the road are if we're going to have any kind of community of progress and address here. And our most recent appointment to the commission authored an op-ed in the Chronicle many months ago, expressing the desire to compromise on the issue of the plan. I think that's the right kind of spirit. I'm not sure necessarily whether the proposal he's made works or not, but I think that's the right attitude going in. So thank you to everyone.
Jean, thank you for that. Corey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I just want to thank everyone for putting their time and effort into this meeting. Obviously, it's well attended. It shows how important this, the airport is to everybody. Everyone has a difference of opinion on certain areas, and we will work through that. I do think the Board of Selectmen does. I'm not looking for the Board of Selectmen to run the airport, no way, shape, or form. But we do have a role in the process. We are fortunate enough to have a lot of dedicated volunteers to step forward and serve on the Airport Commission. They're appointed by the Board of Selectmen. They put their time and energy, and they take a lot of heat for some of their decisions. And I don't think it'd be fair for them to take that heat without the Board of Selectmen being part of that process. So I look forward to working with the Airport Commission. The Airport Commission chair has stated, collaboration would be very productive moving forward. I take him at his word for that. And I look forward to working with the Airport Commission and the public to work through these issues for the future of the airport and the town. So, 3-hour limit. We're good. Thank you very much.
Right. Peter?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I made a number of comments beforehand. I won't go over that. I think it's what I heard was a lot of things that we've heard before, especially from the public, and I appreciate that. I appreciate their concern, their confusion potentially, and their inability, from their perspective, to be able to impact. But they are making an impact. Let me say that I think this board, over the last year or so, has been very much engaged with trying to be part of the process and determining the long-term future of the airport. And I'm committed to that. I'm committed to having a safe airport. I think this whole board is committed to having a safe airport that's representative of our town, and that the members of the commission take seriously the fact that they're citizens of this town and they are representing the town, and how they will approach their management of the airport and what that means for the future of a master plan is very, very critical. Having said that, there has to be, as we heard, a certain amount of compromise potentially, because of the technical requirements to have a safe airport don't necessarily mean it stays the way it is. And that doesn't mean that it has to be, we're having jets coming in and so forth. But I'm committed to do that. Everyone has my email. Please send it to my town email, and I try to answer everyone. I bring forward to the board everything that you're concerned about. I try to be an honest broker, and I think our board has taken a big step forward over the last year in trying to move ahead and meet the requirements of what the people of this town want. But that does not mean that I am going to go against our legal counsel's opinion. I don't think to me, that's not the way I'll do it, but I'll work. I understand what the rules are. There's ways to make things happen, and that's what we need to do. Let's not change we're not trying to change the rules as we go along because we have opinions that are different, at least from my perspective. You have your right to have a different opinion. I will follow the rules, and I'll do it according to those rules within the Board of Selectmen. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter. I do want to say that I think this was a really helpful experience tonight. And we gained a lot of clarity in the roles of each of us. But I do want to say that, you know, a few years ago when there was the contentious meetings at the community center and there was a lot of emotion and big crowds and whatnot, and we all felt a great frustration in the process. But I do want to say to the Chairman Huntley that I appreciate that we have been working together, Peter, you and I, in talking about this meeting and what we want to do. And I did want to say I appreciated the email that you sent me where you did acknowledge that there's work to be done, but you did you promised to work hard to accomplish those tasks, and I really appreciate that. It shows a commitment to the community. So I do want to say thank you to everybody from the public that did speak tonight, and to the board and the commission for their valued opinions and comments. You know, we have a better understanding, I hope, of our roles, and I just want to thank everybody for that. So I think what we'll do right now, since it's 9:07. Is Huntley, I'm going to ask for you to turn to your commission for a motion and a vote to adjourn this evening.
All right. I'm going to get my list out. I guess I can do it off the top of my head. I'd like to entertain a motion from one of the commissioners to adjourn.
I'd like to make a
Motion.
Okay, I think we had the motion. I heard a second. Roll call, Commissioner Galen,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilcox,
Yes.
Commissioner Cortese,
Present.
Commissioner Burke is gone. Commissioner Donovan's gone. I think I got Commissioner Owens.
Yes.
Yep. And
Adios.
I say yes as well.
Okay. Thank you, Huntley.
You're
Thank you all. Okay, I'll accept a motion from the Board of Selectmen to adjourn the meeting.
So moved, Peter.
Second?
Second, Jeff.
Okay, Jeff or Dean, I'm not sure who it was. Okay, I'll take a roll call. Jeff,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Chair says aye. Okay. Well, before we end, I just want to thank Jill and the staff who prepared and supported this meeting tonight. I just want to say, you know, after the COVID reports that we've been saying, I want everybody to stay safe and well, wear a mask, wash your hands, and have a great night, Chatham. Good night.
Thank you.
Night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Night, everyone.
Good night.